call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting for the Board of Education for the School District of Waukesha. It's July 30th, 2020. Sue, will you please take the roll call?
William Baumgart.
Here.
Corey Montiel.
Here.
Greg Dietz.
Here.
Amanda Roddy.
Here.
Diane Voigt.
Here.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Here.
Kurt O'Brien.
Here.
Karen Reinacek. Joseph Como.
Here. Thank you, Sue. And can you also let us know if we were properly posted for tonight?
We were.
Okay, thank you. We do have 3 orders of business tonight. The first 2 items are approval of contracts for potentially new people working in our district. And the third item is going to be potentially approving the school reopening plan. So, Kurt, do you want to present those? Or I think you have that information at your desk.
Yeah, I certainly do.
So we're going to start out with the approval of the recommended candidate for the interim assistant principal of eAchieve. Let's start with that one.
Yeah, we'll start with that. The administration is recommending Emily McHugh for the position of interim associate principal of eAchieve Academy. Emily has a solid background in teaching, and she is highly committed to education and eAchieve Academy. She has always taken on leadership roles in the school setting. As a teacher leader, she consistently sets goals for herself and her school, volunteering to help in many areas, such as SAIL, IC, and AVID. She is clear about her beliefs in the school mission and meeting kids where they are at, and that all students can learn. She is a big supporter for AVID and has been a helpful resource for the site team and teachers. Emily has planned virtual professional development at eAchieve and understands that it works differently. She keeps this at the front of her mind, how to make the experiences useful and meaningful for staff. Emily understands her audience and how they will hear what she is saying. She is a great listener and listens to understand. Emily McHugh is currently a science teacher with eAchieve. Prior to teaching at eAchieve, she was a teacher at South High School. She received her Bachelor of Science in Biology and Secondary Education from UW Green Bay, a Master of Education in Teaching and Learning, and a Principal and Director of Educational Certification with Carroll University. Emily McHugh's resume was provided in your packet. Salary and benefits will be according to the middle management policies of the school district. I move to approve the recommendation and contract of Emily McHugh for the position of interim associate principal of eAchieve Academy.
Is there a second to that motion? Second by Diane. Discussion. Yes, Kurt.
eAchieve's enrollment is expected to be up a great deal this year, and so it's nice to be able to prepare for that rush of new students into our program. So it'll be an exciting year for eAchieve.
Do we know where the number's at this time? Yes, Bill? Microphone?
We're up in the 920 range right now,
Okay.
and it's from all over the state.
Good. Good, and that's full-time, right? Because we also have a part-time
Well,
option.
that's the number she,
Yes.
Jan gave me, so.
So just
Yeah,
in
go ahead,
context, Mr. Como, I mean, normally it's 600 to 700 kids a year, so that's a significant increase.
And there's still time to enroll, so maybe it'll even be higher.
Yes.
Excellent. Other discussion, comments? Yes, Diane?
I think it's really important that we do backfill since we took the assistant, principal there and made him
Mr.
the
Smith?
temporary, the temporary principal. And now to fill that position, especially with their growing numbers, I think is a really important consideration for us to be doing that.
Other discussion, comments? Yes, Bill?
Leave me with the question, is Jason still be in the eAchieve, or don't we know?
Sharon, is that correct?
Jason's the interim principal of eAchieve.
The interim
Associate.
principal.
This is the assistant we're talking about. I'm sorry.
Because Rick is still recovering,
flipped over.
is our understanding. So, other questions or comments? Okay, Sue, will you please take the vote on the position of the new interim assistant principal over at eAchieve?
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
William Baumgart. Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek. Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye. Passes 9-0, Sue. Congratulations, Emily. Moving on to our next contract, and this is for the position of principal over at Lowell Elementary. Kurt?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Como. The administration is recommending Lori Parker. Help me with the pronunciation, Sharon.
Pogrzelski.
Porgerzelski. For the position of principal of Lowell Elementary School. Sorry about that, Lori. Lori Porgerzelski is an effective, experienced building leader. She has transformed her current elementary school into a high-performing school. Lori is relentless in her compassion for students and staff alike. She is highly relational and a great communicator. Her positivity and confidence will help bring a calm resolve to Lowell during these uncertain times. Lori has strengths in curriculum management and development that make her a huge asset to help teachers with their instructional frameworks. We are truly fortunate to have an administrator of her caliber and experience join the Lowell community and the School District of Waukesha. Lori Porgerzelski is currently the principal of Willow Glen School in the St. Francis School District. Lori also serves as the district's Director of Instruction and Assessment. Prior to that assignment, Mrs. Porgerzelski was a math coordinator with the School District of Waukesha. She has been a teacher in Elmbrook and Wauwatosa school districts. Lori received her Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education from Mount Mary College. She has a master's degree in Educational Leadership and Curriculum and Instruction from Cardinal Stritch College, and is a doctoral candidate at Concordia University. Lori Porgerzelski's resume was provided in your packet. Salary and benefits will be according to the middle management policies. I move to approve the recommendation and contract of Lori Porgerzelski for the position of principal of Lowell Elementary School.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Montiel. Any discussion? Comments? I think she has excellent qualifications, very, very good qualifications. We are lucky. You had mentioned to be lucky to have her. I think we would be lucky to have her. Yes.
Just one question from, she was with the district, our district before, is that correct? Or how long was she with us?
I don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Ask
know.
these tough questions.
2008, 2010.
2 years.
2008?
The resume.
It's on the resume?
Yep.
Yeah, 2008, 2010. Okay, so
As the curriculum coordinator, K5 math, yeah. Good.
I probably should ask Dr. Siebert on how to pronounce the name. He probably has that down to a T already.
You did well with it.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, Sue, take the roll call vote.
Greg Dietz.
Aye.
Karen Reinacek.
Aye.
Corey Montiel.
Aye.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Aye.
Diane Voigt.
Aye.
William Baumgart.
Aye.
Kurt O'Brien.
Aye.
Amanda Roddy.
Aye.
Joseph Como.
Aye, passes 9-0. Sue, congratulations, Lori. We look forward to having you join our district again. I'm smiling if you can't tell.
Tell by your eyes.
And hopefully, Karen, I just want to make sure, can you hear us? You're hearing us okay? Good, good. Just want to make sure, because there's going to be, I think this next topic is going to be maybe a bit longer than the first two. That's my prediction. So we're going to roll into the approval of the school reopening plan. We're basically going to pick up our discussion where we left off on Tuesday, and we had a number of questions asked, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Siebert and kind of outline things here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Como. So, first of all, thank you for being here again this evening and engaging in this very challenging work. I don't think any time in K-12 education have we had a bigger mountain to climb or challenge to face, but together we are getting there. And we started back in March with the reopening work that's continued throughout the summer to the date that we find ourselves here. I want to give a lot of credit again to the reopening committee and the work that they did, along with Waukesha County and the Waukesha County superintendents. I shared a couple pieces with you today from that group. And this plan has been put together with guidance from federal sources at the CDC, from the state level, from the Department of Health Services, and the local level with Waukesha County. And the situation, as you're very well aware, is very fluid. So we want to tonight walk through with you the plan, once again, not present it again, but highlight anything that you need highlighted and also answer the questions that you had on Tuesday that were very insightful. So we have time set aside for that and then to answer any additional ones you may have. We also have a draft at your table of our second survey that we plan to send out to both parents and staff to get their perspectives on the three options contained within the reopening plan, which once again are in-person, virtual, or e-achieve. And we'll answer any questions that you have on that. And then you'll see at your place, Mr. Como and I this morning worked on a motion that we put together regarding the reopening plan. And in the fluidity of the situation, then this afternoon you saw the governor come out with a statewide mask mandate that begins on August 1st and extends for 60 days, and also considers Wisconsin to be in the substantial uncontrolled transmission category. So as everything that we've talked about with this plan needs to be fluid and it needs to have multiple aspects so that we can be flexible and nimble. And it seems like the word of COVID-19 is pivot, right? And try to be adjusting continuously. So with all that being said, what we'd like to do is start by, we'll walk through the questions that you had, we'll answer any additional ones, and then we'll review the survey draft. And then I think at that point, let's see where we're at and come back and talk about the considered approval of the motion and if you're comfortable with that. And at this point, we'll start with the questions. So does that sound good, Mr. Coleman?
I think that's a good plan.
All right. So some of the questions, we had a little list going, Ms. Landish and I, and we then talked about those in a cabinet meeting on Wednesday. One of the first ones was talking about social distancing in the classrooms and how many kids could we get in a typical classroom if we're thinking about keeping kids as physically distanced as possible. One of the things before I turn that over to Mr. Clark, just that we talked about extensively, Paul Farrow at the county level yesterday, and contained within those stay safe to stay open documents, is masks are one of the primary reasons that we talk about masks and social distancing combined, and school environments themselves are not designed necessarily for social distancing at all times, which is why masks are exceptionally critical. So with that being said, Mr. Clark did look at the various sizes of our rooms and did some calculations that will allow us to have an idea of the number of kids that we could fit in a particular classroom, allowing space for the teacher and allowing space for casework such as cabinetry and so forth. We also have some plexiglass barriers that are going in at the elementary level at this particular time to provide some additional protection. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Clark to just walk us through this document.
Yeah, I just handed out, and the reason I held it is I saw the papers on your desk, and I thought it'd be easier just to clearly hand you the one we're talking about. So as you might guess, our buildings are all different. And so what I did is and I don't know what furniture is in the average room. There's not as many desks as there used to be. There's a lot of tables. So what I did is I just took a 1,000 square foot room. We don't have many of those. 900 is your typical elementary. If you were to design a new building, 900 is kind of the target number. And then I did 8, 7, and 600 just to give you, because our classrooms, our instructional spaces, whether it's small group or special ed, runs this gamut. So then I just took a very simple 36 square feet, 6 by 6 square per student, and gave that number. I think that number is a little high because within those classrooms some have cabinets, some have sinks, some are desks, some are round tables, some are kidney-shaped tables. So I just gave you two benchmarks. If 15% of the classroom is unusable, than the number of kids you could have in I'll reference 900 because again, that's a rounder number or more likely number at the elementary level in particular. You could fit 21 students in there. But if 20% of the classroom is unusable, and keep in mind, I'm assuming the teacher needs some space to still operate. They probably aren't as mobile as they used to be, or won't be moving around the classroom as much. So I really think it's a range. I thought when I started this I could give you a specific number, but there's so many variables into what is a classroom, what are all the spaces needed. So if you were to ask me on average how many students we could fit into a classroom, I would probably give you, 20 to 25 kids, depending again on the instruction model, but it could be as low as 15 in some of our smaller classrooms in a more cabinet-heavy or fixture-heavy classroom. So I don't mean that to be a non-answer, but hopefully you can respect the range that we're dealing with in terms of size and layout of the classrooms.
Diane?
And what is the average class size that we have that we're trying to put into those arrangements?
I based my math on how many I could fit in there. I would say, well, maybe, I don't have, Joe, do you have the, I don't have the enrollment.
Diane?
Like an average class size. Like if you're talking about an elementary school classroom, would a typical elementary class be 21 to 20 kids or more?
No. The youngers are a little bit lower, maybe 25, but, fourth and fifth grade can be up to 28, 29.
In the past is what we're talking, the numbers of the past.
Yeah.
Numbers as of right now, should we just start the school year?
Okay.
Right.
That's exactly what I wanted. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Clark?
Mr. Bryan?
Well, having measured rooms that have to fit kids in, you're going to have at least a 20% unusable state. So capacity in a room that you measure out drops down from normally being able to fit 25 to 27 kids into a room down to 18. And I really think for us to have a target, we need to actually do the measurements. I appreciate the math, but it's kind of like the scientific method. You do the calculation and then you go out and prove it in the field. And with that information, then we'll have a target for how we would utilize our schools to achieve a specific target of social distancing in the classroom. The point was made that we have to have masks anyway, because there's many times it has nothing to do with being in the classroom. There's lots of times where you're going to be next to children, or children are going to be next to each other without the 6-foot social distancing. But in terms of meeting the goals of the CDC, which is really a preference for 6-foot social distancing, especially for the older children, I think we need to have a better indication through measurement. And with measurement, we can maybe check a couple different distances, maybe 6 versus 4.
So,
See how many kids we can get in.
so
In each classroom, in each school, so we know what our real limitations are as we try to achieve a certain social distancing target.
and Darren, I don't mean to speak for you, but I'm going to ask you a question, and I think I have the answer. But we have a system right now that has CAD/CAM drawings of every building in our district, and we should have those measurements of every single room, correct?
Yeah, we have the square footage of every single room, but what we struggled with, because I went to that as well, is pulling that data out of there, and we couldn't accomplish that as easily because not that you can't do it, but keep in mind we have 1,000 classrooms, and to measure them would be a sizable feat. Again, not that we can't do it, but just to keep the scale in mind. So I went with just kind of an average range to hit, to hopefully address the question, but we could continue to try to get that data pulled out of net request.
Mr. Bryan?
I would think each building where teachers are concerned about being safe, they'd be glad to help you with those measurements. get that information. That's what I'm hearing from teachers anyway.
Ms. Diane?
Related to that, are staff allowed back in? That they had not been allowed in the buildings from March until,
I don't know the answer to
you know,
that.
like to just drop back in and go to do your measurements. I don't know that that's been, up to this point, been allowed.
Jim, do you know?
I know with appointment with their principals, they could reach out to their principal if they wanted to go in.
Okay, Kurt?
So I'd feel much better, and it's also about getting buy-in from the educator. If each educator who has a classroom that they're going to be managing assist with getting the measurements for whatever parameters we want to set for social distancing, to see what our capacity limits would be relative to those parameters. Because that sets clear targets. Right now, it's speculation with no clear targets in terms of enrollment.
Yeah, Corey?
Thank you. I guess the procedural question and partial comment is, I know there's a proposed motion, that was drafted. My understanding is if we're going to vote on this plan tonight, any one of the members or more can propose to amend that plan to include or exclude, frankly, whatever the board wants. So
Yes.
So if we want to talk about amending the plan to account for or ask the teachers or someone to measure those classrooms, we could certainly do that. If we want to talk about basically any of these issues, we are not forced at all to vote this plan up or down, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the plan as stated, may I, Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
Go ahead, Kurt.
The plan as stated does not account for social distancing, does not have targets. It says the plan as if possible, and that is a very vague statement, and we'd have to strike that statement from the plan and say specifically. I mean, I don't want to wordsmith the plan. Either we can vote it up or down, or we can choose a different path. But to approve a plan that says social distancing if possible, I can't approve a plan like that.
I mean, my suggestion for tonight, there were a lot of important questions that I thought were asked Tuesday. We might want to first kind of get those answers to those questions, kind of listen to what administration has been able to come up with, so that we can at least put some of that, at least have some sense of where we're headed on those things. Not that we can't dialogue, during those and ask more questions, but my sense is I think we should work through those questions first before we get to a motion. That's just where I'm at. Yes, Corey?
Thank you.
But
And
a motion can be made at any time,
Right.
so.
How I had envisioned this, and obviously I'm just one person, is I have seen this plan presented twice in person. I've watched it 3 times online, and I've read it 3 or 4 times. I assume my other board members have done as much as I have or around that area. At our last meeting, we presented questions to the administration. A lot of those were answered, which is fantastic. Some of the questions we presented are going to be, the results or the answers are going to be provided today. So I'd love to hear those. I think it's a great idea. I'd also like to say, or know exactly what we're voting on. If the plan as presented last time, subject to the changes, is what we're voting on, that's fine. And that we can do a motion at any time, but I think there needs to be a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, and a lot of thought put into any potential amendments to this plan. How we efficiently do that? I mean, if we're coming after the questions and everybody wants to vote this plan up or down, or majority does, then my argument I just made is completely done. That's fine. I'll live with that. But I want to, I guess, be clear that my preference is not to go through the plan again, talk about the changes, have the questions answered, engage in a debate, see if there's any desire by any other board members to vote this up or down. If there is, and that's the way it is. But if each board member has a suggested amendment or amendments, feel out the other board members. If we all agree or majority agrees, I don't think there's a need for discussion on that amendment. If there's a disagreement on that amendment, we go around the table, say our piece, engage in that dialogue, and then see how we want to proceed.
There is a process that we have to follow when we do have amendments, and part of that is discussion.
Sure. Yep.
So,
Okay. I guess that's what I was saying. So, thank you.
Back to you, Jim.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Como. So let's just stay with Mr. Clark since he's on right now, and we'll go down to busing and the cleaning method on the busing, which he sent some information your way yesterday, and he and Dr. Cook were able to meet with first student, I believe on Wednesday, which was yesterday.
Yeah, it was the morning after our last meeting. And I shared a lot more information via email. I didn't know if I needed to make copies of all that, so I just grabbed the cover sheet for the information. But it is all in an email to you if you haven't seen it. Several documents, some websites where studies were completed. In the, what do they call it, SDS sheet, or whether the fact sheet on the chemical too is in there as well for you to take a view at. But I thought this one-page document hit what I took from our conversation as the key points. It has been COVID tested. It does provide 30 days of coverage. We'll probably apply at a more rapid rate than the 30 days just to ensure that it's in place. First Student also operates, besides buses, they do subways and municipal busing, student busing, and a lot of mass transit. They are using this product on all of their, and they're an international firm, on all of their mass transit vehicles, I guess. So I don't know if you have any other questions on that. This is something that there is a financial impact along with the HVAC information. I think this is something I'll bring back to FNF in about a week and a half just to review, and mainly, well, not mainly, but also there's the financial piece to that. So if there's any questions on this, and again, on top of this blanket application, anytime there's an event, obviously we would respond to whether it's just a kid with the flu or a positive COVID situation. There would be immediate response as well.
Hey, Kurt?
I think we need to, I'm okay with what's shown here, but I'd like to know what the estimated monthly cost is for using this product.
Yeah, the annual school year, when I say annual, cost is just over $100,000 for our district.
Diane?
So is this something they won't do unless we pay the extra $100,000?
Yeah, this isn't part of because the product is more expensive. That's one thing with the price. I haven't engaged them yet because I wanted to get a feel of our interest in it, is you're not doing some cleaning or replacing it with this. I want to make sure the $100,000, just over $100,000 is a net price and not, I mean, because there is a savings there in their time and effort. But it's a ballpark number that I thought was solid enough to bring forward to the board.
Kurt?
What was the frequency of application of this product?
The product states that it's up to 30 days.
So the price could be different depending upon how long we run busing.
Sure, it's a multiplication of number of times, right?
So if we were virtual for 30 days or 60 days, we'd expect the price to go down.
Yes, it's time and material.
This is truly fluid. Sorry.
That is true.
We need to have some levity once in a while.
But again, check out, there was a lot of information on this product in your email, so make sure you, if you have a chance, take a look at that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Clark. There's a couple other pieces here. We had some survey-related questions that we'll get to when we get to the survey. So a question on busing, a question on the mitigation factors and what people need to be aware of, the dual language pieces, and the mitigation efforts that I just previously talked about. One of the other questions was, we talked a little bit about masks and what happens when kids won't wear them or refuse to wear them. And in the Waukesha County document, the Waukesha County School Districts have agreed to a 3-step model. It's number 9 within that document. So the first step would be if a student isn't wearing it, that the teacher has a conversation with the student and the parent. The second step would be that the principal gets involved and has a conversation with the student and the parent. And then the third offense would be that the student is moved to an online or virtual environment. In our case, that could be either the virtual program or eAchieve. So essentially a three-step process to give kids the chance to remediate the situation, but also take it seriously enough to move them to a different program. And then there was some discussion the other night too about egregious types of events or coughing on another student or things like that, which obviously can be treated with a more significant response from the district level. And we also got into some discussion then about who can wear the mask and who doesn't have to wear the mask. And if we take some guidance from the governor's document, it was basically that people can make the choice, and if they have a choice that they say they can't for whatever reason, that they can't be forced to. I think we should think about what that means for kids, and I think we should think about what that means for our staff. And certainly I want to let Dr. Cook weigh in on that as well. I think the discussion that we had on staff with masks and face shields, the governor's order says masks are required and that face shields are not a substitute for that. So assuming that would stay in place, I think we would say that teachers and staff need to wear a face mask. But we had already talked that had that not been in place, that we would be okay with the choice, if they wanted to wear one or the other, whatever they felt more comfortable with. But again, with the fluidity this afternoon, now it says that masks are required. So I think we'd have to adhere to that. But Dr. Cook, anything you'd like to add?
When we did discuss this with Gary Resch, his recommendation for somebody who did not want to wear a mask was to use our infectious disease protocol that's listed in policy, and then to go through an ADA reasonable accommodations test to determine if the mask accommodation is appropriate or not.
Sure.
Kurt?
I'm assuming that, the governor's orders will only cover the first month of school. And even if we were virtual or face-to-face, we're going to have some services provided to students on their IEP face-to-face. And I'm also assuming that as we get into this order, the DPI will be involved in terms of providing guidance for students that need to see the lips moving, those types of things that are educationally appropriate that we deal with all the time. Is that right, Mr. Cook?
Yep.
So this is not a hard, fast rule. It's a rule that's delivered that DPI will help us with the accommodation, I believe. Would that be correct?
I would say that's probably fair, Mr. O'Brien, yes. I mean, Miss Landish is wearing one of the masks that has the open mouth area. That's a good example of some of the ones that Dr. Cook explained that we had ordered. And so staff could have access to those, certainly as many as we have, and I'm sure we could try to get more of those as well. There is some value to that, and when she was talking to me earlier, it's nice to see the lips move, and I could see the value in that for students, certainly.
Yes, Corey?
Thank you. So has the administration modified the plan to have teachers mandatory masking and optional shields?
That's part of what we wanted to talk about today, since we didn't actually have that information until just this afternoon. So we had talked about, to your point the other night, giving the teacher some flexibility in being able to choose.
Okay.
But now with the governor's order, I think we'd have to update it to what you just suggested.
Okay. Regarding I guess I'm a little confused on what the district's proposed plan is on students who, for a medical reason, have a doctor's note or otherwise say they cannot wear a mask. The ADA doesn't cover all people that will tell us that they cannot wear a mask. I spoke with an adult who when she was 16, was sexually assaulted and now has PTSD. I don't know if it's diagnosed, but she says she did, because when she was sexually assaulted, the person covered her mouth. That person is not going to wear a mask. So I guess I need some clarification on what the proposed plan is, and then the board can say, are we going to amend that or not? I had another question, but I'll come back to it.
Sure. Dr. Cook, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, the plan is proposed is what it was proposed on Tuesday night. It's up for the board discussion right now. The plan was designed to keep everybody as safe as we possibly can in a school environment. The ADA does accommodate for PTSD and other things, so if somebody has a diagnosed disability that we have to accommodate, we would be working to accommodate that. They would have to present something from their medical provider. We did learn this morning that medical institutions are telling their doctors that they're not allowed to write mask notes to people. We heard that from our school nurses who participated in southeastern Wisconsin.
Not allowed what?
We heard from our school nurses this morning who were participating in a southeastern Wisconsin school nurse call that many of the medical institutions are telling doctors not to write "don't wear a mask" order or notes for people because the medical profession does believe that the mask is effective in preventing the spread of COVID. So for instances that we would have to treat individually based off of disability, we have procedures in order to deal with that. But again, the plan as it sits tonight, unless is amended by the board, recommends masks and face masks for staff and masks for students.
Go ahead,
The
Corey.
only exception in the plan is going through that ADA compliance that Dr. Cook talked about. Doctor's notes
correct?
will not be sufficient.
That was the recommendation from our legal counsel, was to follow the reasonable accommodations tests provided under the ADA and things that we would have to look at under IDEA for students with disabilities.
So yes, right? Okay.
Yes.
Just so we're clear. All right.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, the other question I had is the three-step, I guess, punishment for non-compliance with mask. Is that a change to the policy, to the proposed plan, or is that something we're just going to talk about?
We had talked about previously a two-step approach, and the county document countywide is suggesting a three-step approach. We think, since we're dealing with children, and children make mistakes and have errors in judgment, that we would be fine with the three-step approach. However, if the board is more comfortable with a two-step, that would be fine as well.
And this
So-
applies equally from 4K up to all students in the district.
That's the way we have been
Okay.
thinking about it.
Thank
So
you.
right now, the recommendation that was brought forth by the reopening planning committee was a two-step process, but you're open to the three-step.
I believe we had the two in there, did we not?
Yeah, when we originally were looking at this, I asked Luke Pinion to put together a process. And so his process, I don't have it out in front of me right now, was to use the first, what is scheduled as the first week of school, first few days of school, as an opportunity for teachers to work with kids on the routines and teach. And then for it to be what Dr. Siebert had talked about, a notification to the parent, a conversation with the kid between the teacher, and then the second step was the principal, and then the third step, we were proposing using our pre-expulsion process. Doesn't necessarily end up in the board as an expulsion, but it uses the health and safety criteria of expulsion to reassign the student to E-Achieve. That was what we were working towards, so.
So it is the same.
Four-step.
So three.
Three, four step, yeah.
I was going to say, I can read the response from here, because I think it really is well thought out, and it'd be one that'd be worth adopting. The question is, if I want my child to wear a mask, but other children in the classroom won't keep their mask on, what rights do we have? Can I demand all children in a room to keep their masks on? So, and the answer is the teacher will be responsible for guiding students in wearing of face coverings. Students will be redirected when they are not following expectations. If a student willfully refuses to follow the teacher's direction, the incident will be communicated to parents and documented. So that's offense one. If there is a second offense, there will be a conference between the parent and principal. The third offense will result in the student being placed in an alternative learning environment, virtual or distance learning.
So just to be clear, right now, that is not part of the plan, or is it part of the plan?
When the committee was meeting, it was discussed as something that was in the works. We, as a reopening committee, the concerns brought forward by our teachers and principals on the committee was, what do we do if kids refuse to wear masks? At that time, I asked Luke Pinion to put a procedure together for that, knowing that it was not spelled out in the reopening plan, but it was a document, it was a procedure that we would be parents, upon approval of the plan. Again, the board could go in a different direction tonight if they so choose, so we did not add that into the plan.
Okay.
It was done as a directive from the committee, but separate from the committee work.
I just want it so that we understand as a board what was in the plan on that topic, so.
I'm
okay.
still-
Patrick? Oh, Patrick? turn your mic on, Pat.
So how long are they out for? Say that the child doesn't wear the mask 3 times, and then we put them in a distance learning for how long? The rest of the year, the rest of the semester, a trimester, a quarter?
It would be the same duration as kids who are choosing to go virtual.
Okay.
So if you select virtual and we're indicating that you need to be there for the semester, it would be revisited at that semester point then.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, Greg?
Does that plan include students that don't wear a mask on the bus? And if so, who gives that, who has that conversation with the student?
The bus is an extension of the school day, so we have worked with First Student. They have a disciplinary recording procedure, so a bus driver has a problem with me on the bus, they go and write an electronic referral that goes to the principal, and the same thing then is triggered. We do have video, the buses are recorded from both the front and the back, so we can verify any compliance, non-compliance, any behaviors that we have on the bus, so we can request the tape to verify if the kid was refusing to wear the mask or not, and then we can address it accordingly. And the same procedures then would apply.
Thank you.
Corey?
And I'm sorry, Dr. Cook, I had a little time hearing you. So is the 3-step punishment or noncompliance process in the plan or not? The proposed plan?
It has not been spelled out in the plan. It could be added to the plan and provided to the board.
Okay.
But we did want to see what the conversation was tonight around what should we do with noncompliance? Because if the board were to elect not require masks in school, so take the governor's order that we heard about a couple hours ago out. If the board decided to take masking out of the plan, then there would be no purpose in having a disciplinary procedure added for failure to comply. So we were waiting for the order to say everybody must wear masks, and then in the weeks ahead, presenting what would be the disciplinary procedures for the student who does not have the mask on.
Right, and I'm not complaining or saying that's inappropriate. I'm just saying we need to know exactly what we're voting on if this is going to be an up or down vote. So that's all I'm saying.
And we can bring any procedures back to the committee work that we have coming in August for final approval. Just so the board knows, the plan addresses what the district expectations are going to be. We are going to be having our schools work to operationalize whatever you approve tonight in the weeks ahead, because there will be nuances by school, by level that we need to accomplish.
Thank you.
I saw a hand. Diane?
In light of what happened today, the governor's expectation is there for the first 30 days of school. Also receiving the information from Waukesha County, the Waukesha County Division of Public Health strongly urges public and private schools and school districts considering in-person schooling to require all students and all staff to wear a face covering when at school or while participating in school activities. And I'd like to make a motion that we set up such a policy for the School District of Waukesha, that it's not subject to being overruled by the governor or any other situation, that we follow the Waukesha County Health Department's recommendation to actually have a policy in place.
Did you just make a motion, or
I
you will?
would like to suggest, and I would like to make a motion if I could.
Ahead of the motion to consider the entire plan?
This is a motion just to address the idea of masks, because I think it's a separate issue than the total picture, especially in light today of the governor's recommendation and as well as yesterday's recommendation from our county exec.
So what is your motion?
My motion is that we approve the proposed mitigation strategy that cloth face coverings be worn by all when in School District of Waukesha buildings to reduce the spread of COVID-19.
Point of order, I guess is what I'd call it.
Bill, can you turn your mic on?
Yes, I got to move up.
Or get closer?
The question being, can we all of a sudden have a motion on something that's not agendized unless we built it into the program that we have agendized?
Yeah, I think that is a good point of order. We have been agendized to talk about the plan as a whole and not individual specific points like this. But during the discussion, Diane, you can make an amendment to include that.
And like Corey said.
To the full motion.
Yeah.
I think you're correct on that, Bill. I think you're correct on that. Kurt?
I think he's correct, but maybe not correct. Let me just, and I'm not trying to cause trouble here, but the reality is we're here to try and come up with a plan either approve the one as is with maybe modifications, which could take us all night long, or approve an alternative plan that will be suitable until we get another plan to approve, maybe that we can implement. I think we need to approve something tonight, whether it's this plan or something else. And I think that if, as part of that approval of a plan, it doesn't have to be this plan, it can be a plan, that what she's asking for is part of crafting a plan, and that plan she wants to specifically include this motion on masking, which I think is appropriate. I don't think that's out of the scope.
As an individual motion at this time.
To be applied to the plan. Whatever plan we approve, she wants that applied to that plan.
I think from a flow perspective,
At the beginning, and that was,
Was there,
when we get to the plan, let's
Add amendments.
amendments to
Right.
it,
well,
or additions to it.
right, I do view what you're suggesting, Diane, as a portion of the plan, but not the whole plan.
Correct.
So.
It's one aspect of the proposed mitigation
I do
strategy.
believe that it would be better as an amendment. It would flow better as an amendment, and that way, we can make sure that I don't get fined to have a specific discussion on something that was not agendized. And so that's the way we'll go. But I would hold that thought for an amendment if we ever get to that point tonight.
Okay.
Kurt?
and I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think the problem is that, you know, there may be a desire not to amend the plan. There may be a desire to submit a different plan rather than trying to amend a plan. And ask the administration to come back with a more complete plan that we can vote on. Because that could be all night. If we're going to try and wordsmith a plan that, you know, I have a lot of issues with. I mean, I'm not saying everybody does. I just don't want to put you guys through all that pain. I mean, if we come up with an alternative that allows us to come up with a much better plan 5 days from now, that'd be great.
Pat?
Basically, the plan is a strategy. The tactics are going to change, correct? So my question is, every time something changes in a plan, are we going to vote on it? Because this plan is going to change probably 10, 15 times before school starts. So in my mind, I think we should vote on the plan because the amendments are going to be made without our say. Yeah, because when something changes in the school, they're not going to bring it back to the board and vote, should we amend a plan? The mic's on. No, it's on. So for us to sit here and discuss every little detail of the plan, that's great tonight. But those little details are going to change constantly. They've changed over the since March of everybody's plan in the state of Wisconsin, and as Kurt knows. So,
Changed since Tuesday.
right, exactly. Changed since this afternoon.
Mhm.
So, you know, I mean, I think that we have to realize that this plan is the strategy and the tactics. And you know what I'm talking about on a battlefield. You know, the major plan is the strategy, and how that war is fought and won is the tactics. And that's going to be done in the schools. It's not going to be done in a boardroom, for sure. The principals are going to
So
adjust accordingly to their population, to how many people come to virtual, how many people come to face-to-face, how many people go to e-achieve. We can approve it right now, and with all of our amendments, but when that parent survey comes back, it's going to change again. Are we going to have another meeting to add amendments?
we might.
Well, that's going to have to be a yes or no. I mean, that would change too. There's another
so-
part that might change because you say maybe.
So the
Chris,
way
you're
I-
saying yeah.
The way I look at this is just like any other plan that we have approved. So let's take our budget,
Yep.
right? We approve that plan every year, but the interpretation and the operations and the responsibility to fulfill that plan is left up to the superintendent in operations. So I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Right, so when changes are made, very few of them come to the board. Because there's constant changes made to our budget that we don't see at F&F.
So
Unless they don't come to the
I
board.
do also know that when administration feels that there's an important point that needs to be brought up to the board level when they're executing something, they bring it back to. So it's
So are we
both.
anticipating, asking the administrators here who are going to be actually implementing the plan, are we anticipating that happening?
That we would come back every time we needed to make some kind
Yeah,
of.
what would be, I mean, I guess what would in your mind would be that threshold where it'd have to come back to the board?
Well, I think certainly when we would need to, just off the top of my head, change delivery models, obviously. And that's where we'd like to be, where we could say, well, we're seeing the uptick in cases and we think we're going to have to transition from any type of in-person to full virtual, and we need your support or vote on that. I wouldn't envision.
'Cause that would be heavy, that'd be a heavy.
Yeah, but
right,
I wouldn't envision, making subtle tweaks to
Right, to the plan.
plans or the way we do the lunchrooms or the way we.
Right.
That's all, administrative work.
So say that Bethesda has a spike in that side of town and we have to close that school, because I'm assuming that during the year, we may have to close a school on our own. Is that going to come before the board, or are we just going to, or is the administration going to make that decision? I'm just trying to figure out, because this is new territory, this kind of plan, a mitigation.
It's a great question, Mr. McCaffrey. I think it's going to depend where the closure comes from. So if the county comes to us and says,
Right.
you got to shut this down, we're probably going to tell you.
Shut down, right.
If it's up to us to say, what's the threshold, and you have to determine, we're probably going to come to you and say, what do you think
Okay.
Bill?
No, I have another question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pat.
Just
Go ahead.
at this point?
It's going to be directed towards Mrs. Voigt. When you were talking about adding that, are you talking about adding the county guidelines?
No, the county is suggesting that we have a guideline. They're not
Yes.
making, they're recommending, strongly recommending.
Right.
And after my recent experience with the experiment of strongly recommending at a major social gathering, and knowing the 20% response that we got,
Yeah.
Strongly recommending is not going to cut it. I think we need to have a policy,
Put it in there,
that we can have a policy that says we require masks.
outside of the county. Don't even mention the county.
No,
Because
no.
if we tie ourselves to the county.
No, they're
and they
recommending
say, "Hey,
that
no
we take
mask,"
the initiative.
okay, right.
They're recommending that we take the initiative. The governor's recommending we take an initiative, but his expires in 30 days.
Right.
I'm recommending we make it
Okay.
part of our policy.
Okay, excellent.
Bill?
Before I forget everything I was going to say. Part of an agreement with a disagreement here, I heard it in there and I was thinking about this earlier. Relative to tonight, one of the things that might be helpful is to let these conversations take place and just have the plan revisited without being voted on tonight. Because I think it would be it would simplify things if we took it back to the committee with the ideas that we're putting forward here and write it, but, fix it up.
That could be a possibility, Bill.
And then we get to look at it again at some point in the not too distant future. Second part of that is how much of this, to Pat's question, how much of that has to come back to the board and back to the board and back to the board every time a change exists. And at some point, we have to, remember, we're here as board members not to manage the district.
Mm-hmm.
That's Jim's job.
Yep.
So at some point, we give some authority, or whatever the word is. We can always come back and say, Jim, that was stupid. Don't do that again.
Sure.
But in the meantime, all these little things, and I agree, there are going to be changes that are going to come along the way. Let's have some faith in our administrative people to handle those things. As we have that, all 400 policies we have are there to tell them that we'd like you to do this, manage it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's.
And that was the spirit of what I was trying to get across with my example of just the budget and how we handle the budget, and they implement the plan, and they go from there. So I think Corey was next.
Thank you. School board sets the policy as to what happens in the district. We're the elected officials. We clearly set the policy. That's our prerogative. I think it's not subject to argument. The administration, my understanding and my belief is they implement that policy. So there has to be flexibility to deal with the day-to-day changes. But my concern is if we're going to talk about mitigation efforts, which is great, I've got some issues with some of these, but I don't think it's the administration's prerogative to say, we are now going to encapsulate each child in a plexiglass shield. I think that's something that has to come before the board. So can we write a perfect policy that deals with every eventuality of that? No. My suggestion, and I thought of this, I know a lot of us have, is we have a standing special meeting every week until school starts and probably through the first month to deal with changes that the administration wants to deal with, that approach the level of Dr. Siebert's and everybody on the cabinet's idea where they say, boy, this is approaching a policy change. Instead of waiting for one of us to hear about it when school starts or someone to have an issue with it, we say, okay, come to us every week and say, we're not sure if this is a policy change, but here, we'll put it from the board, then the board decides if it's a policy change. Or if there's nothing brought forth or agendized on that, we can say we don't need it. That doesn't include the administration coming to us and saying, we have a clear understanding of the board's policy. We do not believe this even comes close to changing that policy, but we're going to change a few things, school-specific or what chemicals we use. But I think the board has the obligation to look at those things that approach the policy level throughout this process and to accomplish the flexibility that's needed and that's built into the plan. I think we need, or I'd strongly suggest we have oversight on those things that even come close to approaching policy decisions.
And Kurt was next.
Yeah, I just want to say, because it's so rare, I'm in 98% agreement with Mr. Baumgart. But no, we've always had this agreement that, you don't try to micromanage, the process. And that's, you're not surprised that I agree with that. And even though you do see me probably overreach in your mind at times. But so absolutely, of course, at the same time, we're going to rely on some policy changes, probably dealing with issues relative to HR related in terms of staff that might have specific needs as this process goes on, or even student discipline policies that might have to develop as this process goes on. I think I agree with you 98% because I do agree. This is not the time to be voting on a plan that we haven't heard all the information we still need to hear tonight, because we just started to hear this stuff and we started asking questions. But this plan is a plan that was developed with a intent that we all had. I think we all had an intent to go back to school 5 days a week, try to relaunch our school system this fall. And that was at a different time when we had a third as many infections as we have today. And we're the second highest county in the state of Wisconsin, and we're in the top 20 counties nationwide of infections in the last 14 days. So it changes the kind of plan that we can feel comfortable with going forward, and it's changed other districts. New Berlin's made a drastic change because of the changing in an environment. So we're asked to approve the plan that was developed under a totally different mindset. We've adapted, we've changed it some. We put in mandatory masks, which I appreciate the administration for trying to do that. But the concerns and risk of staff have accelerated dramatically all across this area. I mean, Elmbrook, Muskego, they're all staff people are very concerned about going back to school without the proper safety precautions. So I don't want to violate the trust that we're trying to build with staff and the community by saying, well, here's our plan, but we're really not going to do this. By the way, fill out this survey. Do another survey for us. I don't mind getting another survey and then approving a plan, but approving a plan and then asking to fill out a survey is almost biasing the survey. So that's where I'm at. And I think it's the same place where you're at, Mr. Baumgart. That's why I say I'm 98% agreement. I'm also in agreement with Corey. We do have to set policies and procedures.
Well, just because it's agendized to approve a plan tonight, we don't have to approve a plan tonight. You guys are absolutely correct. So, but we can if we want. So I think we should continue the dialogue and continue to have the questions. Diane? answered.
Related to this is one of the components of the plan that I think is missing is exactly what we were addressing when we started this late last spinoff of conversation. We don't have the criteria to say that we need to transition from face-to-face instruction to to virtual instruction.
Right.
We don't have the transition of what level of safety needs to be met.
We have not defined that.
We have not defined that.
That
And
is
I think
correct.
our policy should, as staff members are deciding to want to be face-to-face, knowing what the criteria is that's going to say that it's a safe environment. Just because we thought it was going to be safe in June, like as Kurt mentioned, it doesn't mean it's safe right now. So I think that definition, that gating criteria, I think is what they call it in some contexts. How do we go from one place to the next? When do we say enough wearing the mask? We don't have to do it anymore because the spread's not an issue in Waukesha County. I think all those should be, by policy, kind of stated, and then we just back off and let you take care of it. But I think there has to be, the administration needs a guide of what is an acceptable risk level. What do we want to have as a safety standard, since safety is our highest priority as we make these decisions, as far as I'm concerned.
All right, Jim, why don't we go back to answering some of the questions from Tuesday?
Sure. Well, I think for the most part, most of the other questions are captured in the survey draft.
Okay, why don't we start with that, or go to that next?
Sure. So Steve has put together, thank you, Steve, Mr. Schloman, this draft survey. And
Is there a way to put it up on the screen so people can see it? No, the TV audience. Do you have that, Sharon? Or Steve?
yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Schloman will put it up. Yeah, so basically, I mean, what the thought is that parents would complete this survey for each student that they have in their family using their student's ID number so that we can ensure that we are getting valid data. And they choose their grade level, they choose their school, they choose whether they're involved in a specialty program. And then we get into them telling us by August 5th what their preferred option would be. And the links that are bold-faced in the middle of page 2 are some of the documents that you have copied for you, compliments of Sue. So the mitigation strategies are the ones that are red, that talk about what the expectations would be in the building. And then Ms. Landish described the virtual learning schedule the other day. That would be included as well, so people can see the specificity and structure around virtual learning. And then the eAchieve Academy website will be linked as well, so people can look and understand that better if they need to. And then there is the transportation question at the end. So it asks if they were able to participate or eligible last year, and if they plan to this year, would they be willing to do that, acknowledging that they would need to wear a mask.
But just for the people in the audience, so that they can get a sense, the in-person, this is a that we're providing. Information that we're providing to each audience, just so you know.
Psychedelic.
Okay, so one of the things that as a board on Tuesday that we asked is when parents fill out the survey, that they truly have a sense of what they're getting into for each of the options. The eAchieve option's easy. Just go to the eAchieve website and there's a ton of stuff on the eAchieve website, okay? However, so nothing really changes other than I hope our staffing has to go way up because we have 4,000 students enrolled in that. So from outside of the district. So anyways, for the in-person, the parent that wants to have their, something up? Okay. So if you want your student, your child, to have face-to-face teaching, these are the details that will be provided via the link to help explain what that looks like. Now, the third option, actually, the other option with the brick and mortar students or teachers at each school is if they taught virtually, if your homeroom teacher taught virtually, there's a 6 pages of details to help that parent understand what that looks like. So before they take the survey, hopefully this is enough detail to help kind of frame it for each parent before they take the survey, and for each teacher before they take the survey. Yes. So that is actually, these are links on the survey itself. So I highly encourage, if and when we get this out, and I'm assuming hopefully we'll say, yes, let's get this out. Hopefully we have enough detail to frame this for each person that's taking the survey. That was our goal. That was important to this board, and that was the attempt to accomplish that here.
Good work.
Make sense? Okay. Jim, any?
Well, maybe I'd ask Mr. Schloman, is there anything that I didn't mention about the survey that you created that you think I should? Okay.
So the goal of the survey, Jim, can you just remind us of that?
So what our hope was that we would be able to do this survey for both students, families, and staff. So when I say students, I mean families. They're collaborative. And staff. And send it out tomorrow on July 31st, have it back by August 5th, and ask each of those stakeholder groups to tell us what their preference would be. Coming back in person, coming back virtually, or going to eAchieve. And then that would allow us to take that data and drill down by school, by grade level, to determine how many students we had for each of those options. And that would help us determine if we could partner the preferences of both staff and families together to create a system that offered those 3 options. So that's the goal. And through that was the way that we anticipated, if the survey results come back in a somewhat synonymous way, that we could achieve social distancing within classrooms by having fewer in-person students and having students that selected the virtual and eAchieve. So until we have that data, we can't tell you that is for certain the way that it would work, but that's what we had hoped to be able to do. And in listening to parents and in listening to staff, we think having these 3 options meet the needs and the desires that people are asking for.
Bill?
Question 1.
Q2, Q7, Q8. Will be to the reader. Oh, they're not going to see those. Okay, that's good.
Right.
The other thing is significantly more important than the last 2 days ago. You are conceivably talking about having all 3 of these options going on at the same time. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just a little bit, that's new news to me. We could do it that way. And yes, that, that may be a staff issue, may not, it may come out fine.
We don't know if we can do it that way yet or not. So, for example, if it comes back, and I don't think it's going to be 90% face-to-face, that, there's just no way we could do that. But that's the hope, Bill, is that we get the data back, and we're trying to allow the parents to choose what's best for their child and to allow the teacher to choose what's best for him or her.
That last sentence is very important because this would mean that there's going to be a certain number of teachers exposed.
Right. So we don't know, again, we don't know what the data will show from the second survey. We might not be able to get it to work, but we might.
Okay.
So we just don't know till we have the data.
Right.
Kurt.
I guess, why are we using preference? Why don't we require enrollment? I mean, if we really want to know that it's a real number, then you would say you will be enrolling your child in a virtual learning program that we have yet to define, or you will be enrolling your child in eAchieve, or you'll be enrolling your child expecting that child to be in a face-to-face. Because it really is an enrollment question. It's not really what's your preference. What program would you like to enroll in? And I think that's a stronger way of stating that your answer here is an expectation that you're going to enroll your child, because we can't make a plan and then half of the people say, well, I said I was interested, but now I'd prefer this. It changes everything. So it's almost like enrolling in a class. Are you going to enroll in one of three options? And we can't guarantee that, other than eAchieve, we can't guarantee the other two options will be available at the start of the school year. We really can't. But for each child that says they want it or don't want it or anything. So I'm okay with doing the survey, but at the end of the day, and I think it's a good idea to do a survey, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to make some decisions as to whether we can go forward with A, B, and C, and how do we accommodate it. And then if the parents turn around and say, yeah, I was interested in virtual, but now I want to go face-to-face, it changes everything.
And we are trying to get a commitment for a semester from each family.
Right.
Or for each student. You may have multiple students in a family. I think Diane had her hand up next.
It does say with a semester-long commitment in mind, which is, I think should be bolded, because that is a serious consideration, that this isn't just like for the first week of school or something, but that this is a semester-long commitment in mind. I have two things. First of all, I have a lot of potential tweaks we could do to the mitigation efforts. And I'm wondering if we could say that these are the proposed mitigation guidelines, because they will be subject to change as administrators take a look at, do we really want to have, that lunch period that we talked about that's going to be 50 minutes long? Maybe that's not going to be the best at every school, type of situation. Or it says that we're going to keep the same seating chart all year long. And if we're switching up in the middle of the year, that's not very realistic. So just little things like that I'm thinking if we just said proposed, we're not like locked into, well, it said that this is going to be the plan,
Fine. Sure.
Greg.
Dr. Siebert, how will the survey be distributed?
I'll let Mr. Schloman talk to that.
Okay, through
Can we hear you, Steve? I don't think we can hear you.
through email?
Survey will be sent through email, Qualtrics, and via school messenger, the same way that everybody gets all their district messaging.
And then what happens to the parents that don't return it? Because, if we only have 40% that return it.
So we do have, since we're requiring a student ID, we will be able to identify who has not filled out the survey, and then we could reach out to them in another manner.
And then what percentage of parents responded to the first survey?
67.
almost 80,
80, okay, so a high percentage. Okay.
very high.
Okay, thank you.
Corey?
Could we add a fourth option to question 11? Because we're pinning, some parents have told me they're simply going to not enroll their students in the school district of Waukesha. They're going to homeschool, they're going to go somewhere else, private school. So I think to predict the numbers, I think we need a fourth option.
Not attending our school?
Yeah. Not that I encourage that, but
I just wonder if we are encouraging that by putting it on. That's the only thing that I wonder.
I don't think that'd be a good question. You're not going to get, a lot of them will just out of spite just say, I'm not going. Right? It's there. I don't like it.
I guess that goes to your point, Kurt. Are we pinning the people, are we pinning the parents down or the guardians down when they fill this out? I think the reality is there are going to be, I don't say significant, but there are going to be a number of families who just say, I'm pulling my kids home. I'm not doing any of this. I'm homeschooling, going to private school. Or I'm going in a different district, or I'm moving. I've heard people saying they're going to move. So I think we need to at least figure out what that number is.
True.
I don't think the survey, I've let many people know it's not a legal contract. You're giving us your best recommendation of what you would do today based on the situation today. And we're going to work those numbers to try and figure out what we're going to do today. I mean, everybody knows it's going to change in the next day or the next week, but we have to establish a baseline, I think, some point so that we can start to plan.
Right, but unless we have 100% participation and response rate, the people who do not respond, we will not be able to tell if they're just simply not responding because they don't care, or they didn't do it correctly, or they didn't hear it, or they're basically saying, I'm not coming. I think that's the last argument. If people disagree, that's fine, but I think we need to know that number.
Diane?
I'm considering, based on what he's saying, like to say other and then leave a blank and please explain what the other is, that we would have a handle on, and then we could reach out and follow up. This is kid, ID number such and such, they're thinking about moving. What do we, before that happens, we could approach them. But I think not suggesting alternatives, but other, and then if they choose that as their answer, you want to know why. Is that something, Steve, we could do?
I could do anything, yes. Whether we want to read through 10,000 others, I don't know as we want to do that since we have a binder of emails that are huge. So, I mean, we know that people like to respond and like to give us their feedback, but how we process that feedback and do anything logically with that is difficult once you've actually received it.
Kurt?
Wouldn't we just give it to Sue to handle?
When you're talking about somebody leaving the district, you might be bordering on that right at that point. So.
Look, I'll be serious now. I think the issue is that for those families who state those concerns, Mr. Montiel, I believe it's based on whatever decisions we make as to whether they're going to follow through with their so-called concerns. So for them to say, I'm just going to leave when we haven't made any decisions yet, because I don't know if we're even going to approve a plan tonight, right? If we were to approve a plan and they knew that was our starting point, then they would have something to say we're going to leave on. But I don't know if we're going to do that tonight. So I'm not sure putting the other question on. I do like other better than you're leaving, because I don't think leaving is going to give you a straight answer. Leaving could be a threat. It could be real, it could not be real, depending on what we do.
I would be in favor of none of the above before I would be in favor of other. Then you could at least identify the people that don't want any of those plans.
Right, none of above would probably be better, yes.
I respect Mr. Schloman, and it sounds like I'm being a jerk, but he's not a member of this board. So as far as implementation.
He is a member of administration, Corey.
Okay.
And administration has brought forth a recommendation to us. He's allowed to participate and brainstorm with us.
Okay.
Keeping the floor, I mean,
We
if we're going to...
actually asked him.
Yeah, keeping the floor. Reclaiming my time, Mr. Como, as I guess they say. I can understand having an extra question if that's what's desired, or I can understand leaving them as is, either way.
It is our decision, though, Corey, as to what we do. But we can hear recommendations from administration.
Sure, fair enough.
Didn't mean to snap at you there. I was kind of smiling, but I keep forgetting I can't express myself as well with the mask on.
Fair enough.
Kurt?
If we add another question, I would prefer other over the other two offerings, if we add another question.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that, Greg?
Is there any interest in having parents rate the three options?
I don't know if that's been discussed. Has that been discussed at all?
The purpose, what we're trying to do is to determine if we can pull off the three options. So the thought process was we thought we would like them to pick their number one, so that we had the best understanding of can we make the in-person work? Do we have the number of students and the number of staff that we need? So I don't know how, if we tried to rank them, I'm not sure how we would be able to interpret that necessarily. But I can appreciate the idea.
Diane?
I would like to suggest the rewording of the statement, the question there, to be based on the statement and documents above, comma, my enrollment preference. So it's not enrolling, but my enrollment preference for the second semester, for the first semester, for like the first semester of 2020, 2021, where my child's instruction would be. That they can actually see right there, in case they're just skimming, that this is my preference for first semester this year.
Kind of clarify it more.
My enrollment preference. Not that they're locked into it, but this would be their enrollment preference right now for first semester. It's part of the question, and it's not lost in the mix.
Okay. Karen, I can't see you very well. Are you raising your hand? Oh, okay. I didn't know if you had a... Do you have a question, or?
I have a few comments written on my paper. I don't know when to say them, but no, I didn't have a question.
Yeah, well, let's give you a chance because you haven't had a chance. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just writing down little notes as people speak, but I did think Corey and Diane had a good idea. I think the worst case scenario, people would leave it blank if they didn't have an answer there. So I guess leaving it blank or putting in another option. I guess you're going to get your answer that way.
So do you prefer the word other or none?
Sure, that's fine. If you put other, then they can tell us why.
Okay.
We've had quite a few parents say they're going to keep their kids at home and start homeschooling them. That if we went back, or now that they have an option that they don't, or I shouldn't say now that they have, if they do have an option, schooling at home, maybe they wouldn't. But I guess I don't think it hurts. But whatever. That's just my 2 cents. I have a question as far as when it says online school or e-achieve or face-to-face. Why? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I see Mark doing technical things. So, I'm just wondering why people don't consider e-achieve a virtual learning experience. We've always said e-achieve is our virtual option. E-achieve is a virtual school. Why are parents saying they don't want e-achieve? What's the bad thing with that? I understand that dual language is not offered in e-achieve, but if we offer dual language for e-achieve, is that the only problem? I see that a lot of people have voiced their concern about the virtual learning in the spring. Some have said my teachers did great. Some have said they didn't do so great. And those of us who have high school kids, we know that they have a lot of teachers, and some teachers did well with the online teaching, and some did not. Some it was spread all over the board. We have lots of feedback about that. So when I think about teachers that know how to teach online or are comfortable with teaching online or do it every day, those are our e-achieve teachers. I don't understand why they wouldn't want an e-achieve teacher. So can someone just please explain to me, if we offered dual language through e-achieve, why we couldn't just have in-person face-to-face, or eAchieve as our virtual option? Why are we offering one more step?
Amanda?
My child's in Quest, and Quest isn't offered on eAchieve right now. I know there's Compass, there's the other specialty programs that we have that may be a concern for other, actually it's not, and maybe, we know, because the families have been reaching out to us. So there are many specialty programs. We're blessed and cursed with that, all those choices. And those are not included in eAchieve. And I'm not discounting eAchieve at all. It's well established, 16 years. It's done great for many, many families. But Karen, I think to your point, Quest for my child is not an option on eAchieve. So a virtual setting, if that's where my family chose to go, would be the way.
Kurt?
One thing that also in the survey we have to make sure that people are aware of is, eAchieve when it comes to sports. They're not allowed to be in their regular sports programs. So if they enroll in eAchieve, they're a West football player, they can't play West sports. And we need to be aware of that. And we need to make them aware of that, because that could say, I want eAchieve, but then they don't realize they can't be in the scholastics. But if they're in the virtual, then they can. And I think to answer more closely Karen's question, the feedback I've received from parents about their preference for virtual over eAchieve is they want their child, I think as I said the other night, they want their child to be as if they're in the classroom, but they're sitting at home. So they want that connection to their classmates. They want that connection to the classmates and their teacher. And they want to have the same, if at all possible, the same level of teacher that their classmates have. So that doesn't happen with eAchieve, because it's not with their classmates and it's not the teacher that they would know. So that's the virtual situation.
Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. So give me a picture of what virtual looks like. Is it when, let's say we have 20 students in a classroom that their parents are choosing face-to-face instruction? Do we have a screen up where the children who are at home, who would have been in that class, and when I say class, let's say a 4th grade class at higher, it changes each year. So this is a new year. They're going to have different kids in their class. Would there be some type of a monitor so that those kids at home could feel like they're a part of their class? They can see some faces that they know, and they would be online with them throughout the day? Because that seems like a lot to ask for a teacher, to have her class, to also clean extra, and then to also have those kids online who are going to be needing homework, instruction, all of that. Or is it like it was this spring, where there was a plethora of different things that the teachers were doing? Were they doing a video? And it varies from K through 12. Was there a video? Was the teacher live for 2 hours and then took questions on homework and such as that? I mean, there was such a wide variety. What does that look like if there's virtual learning versus eAchieve? Or could we make an amendment or a policy change to eAchieve to allow sports, to allow the dual language Quest? How can we do it so that we don't have 2 virtual schools? It's like we're recreating the wheel. Other people are doing this because they don't other districts are doing this because they don't have a virtual school. We already have that in place. So how can we alter something that we already have that's working to just make that a little bigger, to incorporate all the things that those kids need that want to stay home?
Ms. Landish could talk to the model that we're going to use.
Jody, can you talk to the model on this?
Ms. Reinachek, the proposed virtual learning structure is highly different than the spring structure, where we had minimally 2 hours of required time for staff and for students. The specific virtual learning schedule is outlined. You probably have it in front of you with very specific class periods upon which students would be attending. It also would be the expectation of the staff member that they are, in essence, the virtual teacher not coming into school, they could, in essence, like the spring, teach from home virtually. They only would be responsible for the caseload of students that they are serving virtually. So I don't want anyone to get confused that we would be asking that staff member to be in two worlds, because that is not what the proposal is recommending. The proposal recommends if a teacher is face-to-face with a small or smaller cohort of students face-to-face, that's one model. The other pathway, again, would be following the virtual learning schedule, and you'll see it's outlined very specifically, the high school schedule, the middle school schedule, the elementary schedule, and the 4K schedule. If people choose that model, ideally they would be with a site-specific classroom teacher, as Mr. O'Brien was describing.
Ann?
The sports thing, Karen, is a WIA requirement. It's nothing that we have control over as a school board policy. And I made a contact to Todd Sobrowski over at South about it as the athletic director, and it's not something we control. It's a WIA thing. The other thing I think, Jody, if you wouldn't speak to, we had talked about possibly giving a waiver to a student that wants to be in STEM, but they're willing to take e-Achieve for a semester, but then they would don't want to lose their place. Back in some of the specialty programs that we're part of, is that something that we could give them that temporary waiver for the semester that they make the switch for, for semester one? But then semester two, if things are all clear, they could go back to STEM, they could go back to Compass, they could go back to some other program.
I think that was the intent.
That is.
That is part of the plan already.
But I think that should be offered in the survey as being in parentheses, that if I don't want to do e-Achieve because I want to be in STEM, that it would be a temporary switch.
Oh, I see.
And you wouldn't lose your place. Does that make sense?
Does.
Some of them are the lotteries and things like that, and I finally won the lottery, and now if I give it up, I lose that opportunity to, for the rest of the career.
Was that specifically talked on in the committee or not? It was? Joe?
Yeah, I mean, this even goes back, we made the adjustment in March to go virtual. All students in Waukesha have an e-Achieve track assigned to them. So if you're a STEM student, if you're in the Quest program, if you're at Hawthorne Elementary School, you also have e-Achieve track. So you could get your education through e-Achieve and maintain your seat at one of our brick and mortar schools. That is our intention going forward. We don't want to penalize a student or a family that wanted to select e-Achieve during this pandemic state.
Okay. Amanda?
I was just going to tell Mrs. Voigt, I believe that point was mentioned in two of the last meetings, that any choice location is going to be held. But are you saying that you wanted it in writing?
In the survey, that people picking e-Achieve as a choice would know that that's something that we're...
So they're aware of
It's a
it.
reminder.
They're aware of it,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. Because again, not every
Like it was
parent's been
established.
watching our 5-hour marathon meetings to
Yeah.
know that was something we covered in the mix of that.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yes, Kurt?
I appreciate all this and all this discussion, and it gets complicated, but I see this kind of going this way. The governor just announced a statewide mask order. Every state that's done that successfully has seen a significant drop in COVID infections. The governor's done it 4 weeks before our school starts, which is plenty of time to have an impact in Waukesha if everybody cooperates with the order. I don't think the Supreme Court's going to end it within those 4 weeks. I mean, if they decide to end it. According to what they say, the governor does have this power to do this. I could see us starting virtually like everybody else does, and 2 or 3 weeks in, being able to go all into school socially, maybe come up with a better socially distanced plan, but still having masks, and not have to worry about these virtual options or e-Achieve options. And that's really what most people want. They want the security of starting. We expressed our concerns that trying to do this all at once was kind of a little bit crazy. You know, we need to phase it in if we were going to do it anyway, the plan. So I truly believe that because the governor announced the statewide mask order today, that's going to have a big impact on the infection rates in Waukesha and Milwaukee. And also, I think our community is aware that we're struggling with the startup because of our high infection rate. As Paul Farrell said, people, we need to get this under control if we want to start our schools up. So I have a lot of confidence in our people that they're going to cooperate, even though, you know, some people maybe don't, but I think everybody's going to want to put the kids back in school, and we're going to see a lot of cooperation with the governor's order. I'm a lot more confident today than I was yesterday that if we started virtual, within 2 or 3 weeks, we'd be able to go all in if we had a great plan, and we wouldn't have to worry about going back out again. If we go in with a bad plan, we're going to end up going back out again because we will be the place where the infections start, not in the community. So if we want to help make this happen, where we all go back to being safe, start virtual, go in with a great plan. Hopefully you'll be able to start it 2 weeks into school or 3 weeks into school, and we'll be off and running.
Corey?
Thank you. Someone raised, I think, a very important question. I think I know the answer, but I want to throw it out there and see what everybody thinks and what the thoughts are. There are households where parents have joint custody of a child or multiple children. There's question is, does each parent get a vote? My understanding, because of my nature of my profession, is if they have joint custody, it's a custodial decision. Those parents should work together and reach an agreement on how they vote. Is that how the district is kind of anticipating to deal with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Karen.
Thank you. What do you think the chances are that WIA could relook at eAchieve and realize this is a virtual school, and if they might be waiving all the virtual school or all the virtual districts that are going to be going in this direction? Sorry, all the school districts that will be going virtual, can't they relook at eAchieve as well as our virtual option and waive that no sports rule? What do you think about that? I don't know if Mr. Siebert has had any issues with that with his other school district dealing with WIA, but since Todd's gone, I know he dealt with them a lot, and I don't know if you did, Mr. Siebert, but what do you think about that?
I'm guessing because it's a virtual charter that allows students from outside the district as well as in, that is why students are not able to participate in WIAA sports. And I think districts that are going virtual, their students would remain eligible to participate in sports if they're not in a virtual charter similar to eAchieve. So if we were to start virtual, as Mr. O'Brien just suggested, our students would be able to still participate in athletics, assuming they're offered. But I don't know that the chances would be real high that the WIAA would waive that. Mr. McCaffrey, you know about the WIAA too. Do you see anything there?
I don't think they're at all. Come forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
I don't think the WIA will waive that, just because the rabbit hole you would go down with, you could easily have people from other districts enroll in your eAchieve school, and all of a sudden they're playing on a football team or something like that. So that is why WIA, I don't think, would ever allow that to happen. They had that problem with baseball where people would move in and then play summer baseball and not actually attend the district.
Right.
Bill?
According to what Joe said before, aren't we already covered for our kids?
Just to let you know, Todd Zabrilski just texted me and said that the WIA has said no to eAchieve full-time enrollments, people who are signed into eAchieve. Just so that the board knows, though, we've had kids taking part-time classes in eAchieve from around our district since its inception. So to what degree the kid would be enrolled in that school, either full-time, full track, or part-time track, we've already had that happen in Waukesha. So we do have ways to investigate. I can talk to the athletic directors and see.
Might be able to play.
If there's a season, there might be.
If there's a season, yeah, but this may be a mute issue.
Wisconsin colleges have canceled their fall sports seasons, just for perspective for the board.
Okay. Anything else on the survey, Jim?
I don't believe so. I think we covered it.
Kurt?
Well, I think it's a little, I don't want to push the survey too hard because I think it's important for us to have it, okay? I don't think it's definitive, but when we talk about what's going to be happening in the classroom, nothing in the survey is really a guarantee, right? Under the banner classroom, when it says limit number of students in the classroom to allow for proper distancing, not more than 25 in a class, we don't know that for sure. I mean, we're hoping for that. And we don't know what proper physical distancing is. We haven't defined that yet either. So it's kind of hard to say what we're telling people is firm. It's somewhat the way it will be, but it's not exactly the way it will be.
And I think that's why Diane said, let's put proposed up there. Yeah. Not proposed in front of every single one of those, but at the very top.
At the heading, at the link
Yes.
that they're going over to. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah, I was smiling, could you tell? Sorry.
This page doesn't have draft spelled across it like a lot of the pages in the PowerPoint did, to let people know that this is a work in progress.
Right. Okay. Was there anything else that you wanted to report out on, Dr. Siebert, or your team?
Anything you think we missed, Dr. Cook or Mrs. Thiede, Mr. Clark?
Okay. So we do have a recommendation from administration in front of us, which, if I can find it, I'll hold it up and show it to
Talking
you.
about proposal?
Yeah, well, there's if I find it, I'll show you. Thank you. It has executive summary on top. And there is a recommendation for a motion. So I don't know I just want to bring it to your attention. And that's coming from administration, and I also had helped Jim draft that this morning. So, Bill?
I'm going to recommend that, as we talked, some of it mentioned earlier, rather than go through this and try to understand what this reopening plan even means, and the things we're going to have to change on it anyway, my recommendation is that we take it back to the committee. Positive things that we talked about this evening can be worked into that plan. Then we have to figure out what we're going to do with the plan, because we don't know if we're going to be even using the three elements come September 1st or what. I'm recommending that we don't take a vote tonight. That's my opinion.
Okay. Kurt?
I'm sort of leaning towards that way, Mr. Baumgart, but I think what we should maybe consider is if we're uncomfortable with the plan as presented as the starting point, which I am, that if there's a suggestion that we do set some sort of other marker to say, for instance, we're going to start this way for now, and then we'll define that next step based on the survey. Not using this plan, but if someone has another plan, I'm willing to go with that consideration. I don't have one. I'm just asking if there's another board member that has an alternative plan, I'd be certainly willing to entertain that motion if they have one.
Corey?
Not to be overly dramatic, but I can physically hear people's heads hitting the desk as we're talking about this. I think it's a perfectly reasonable proposal. I disagree with it because we have been telling parents, teachers, and students that July 30th, we are very likely to make a decision. Teachers need to plan, parents need to plan, especially if people are going to choose to, people need to plan. We are, I can't do the math in my head, but how many weeks away from school starting? 4 weeks, 5 weeks? 5 weeks, thank you. I think we need to vote on a plan tonight. If we choose not to do that, I'll respect it and I'll stop talking. But people need to know. And our plan, as I think was discussed ad nauseum, is going to be flexible. I think if we talk about having a standing special meeting every week, we can address those issues as they come up. And people will know we're going to have a meeting every Thursday at a certain time. And they will anticipate it and say, look, this is what's happening. They can see it happening as it happens. So that's my suggestion.
Diane?
My suggestion would be that we look at starting virtually and then make a decision as we go along. Because at this point, if we would have to make a decision based on the President's COVID task force reading, we're a red zone state with significant uncontrollable spread, and we should be going into lockdown. So for us to be talking about this reopening plan, is not realistic if we're looking at the CDC guidelines. So my recommendation would be not to propose a plan to start in anything other than virtual where we left off until things dramatically change, and that would encourage the community to make a change in their behaviors to make the slow the spread that can happen.
Amanda?
Not to disregard the CDC's points, but from what I've heard and read from families on both sides of this, nobody wants a blanket response. This proposal has been gone over and over and over, and this allows for 3 avenues to address the 3 different groups of families and what they want. The way I understood that tonight was going to go is we have 3 options, and we're going to say, yep, this is our starting point. We're going to ask the families, where would you fall in these? And then that would allow us to fine-tune each piece. So a blanket start is not what I heard. Unless I misunderstood them, it's not what I heard. So I would propose to vote on these 3 options here.
Bill?
There's confusion as to what we're doing. We have a plan, or we're working on a plan which covers 3 different elements of the way to do this. That plan is not a decision on what we're going to do on September 1st.
That's correct.
Just a plan of things we would like to do. I still, and I would agree about the fact if we were to choose a plan, if we were to choose a method that we're going to start the school district education with in a month, I think we're going to probably be starting it with a virtual process. So I see 2 different things going on here. We're going to have a program, or a plan, we're going to have a plan, which I don't know what we're going to do with, other than I think it is important that we get to the community and say we've got these ideas out there, whatever they are, and I would like to see that combination sometime be used with the 3 opportunities. That's a nice approach, but I don't think we're going to start the semester that way. But I think we have to somehow differentiate what we're supposed to be doing here either tonight or next time we meet. We have a plan to deal with. We're eventually going to have a start thing to deal with. And those are 2 different issues and 2 different votes. Right?
It depends on how we go here. It does depend. So what you have before you is, this is how I'm looking at it. We're trying to decide if we want to offer 3 options to our parents and to our teachers, and that's really the plan. And we're looking at trying to see if the plan could potentially be realistic by putting out the survey and getting the data back. We may get the data back and we may go, ooh, we have to go in this direction, or, ooh, no, we have to go in that direction. So we don't know till we get the data, really. I'm wondering if people are feeling comfortable with getting that data. I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Is this important data to us?
Yes.
Okay. So perhaps one of the things we could agree on tonight going forward is getting that data and perhaps approving the survey. Should we maybe start there? as a separate topic? Kurt?
Well, we could start there. I mean, we've already kind of said we're going to do the survey. I don't think that's a debate. I mean, and that doesn't even have to be approved by this board. They can proceed with that if they wish. I think the mistake that we've been making, currently making, whatever you want to say it, you know, we have people that feel strong on both sides, and we're not going to please everybody. We know that. We've been stuck with a plan that was developed under an entirely different set of circumstances, and we're trying to pound a square peg into a round hole. And if we vote to approve that type of plan, that's a square peg in a round hole that doesn't fit the environment, based on all the feedback we got, and we got a lot of it. I mean, I read most of those things before the meeting on the 28th because I had the time. And we got a lot of it from both sides. And they're good people, they're great people on both sides, okay? But when you're talking about safety and health and welfare, the plan that's on the table, given the environment we're in, given even the changes that just happened today, is not an acceptable plan. It's not an acceptable starting point. Virtual is the acceptable starting point, but whether we want to vote on that tonight, if we have a motion, we can do that, or we can just move on.
I don't know.
Well,
The plan is all that's agendized. The plan is all that's agendized.
Vote on how we're going to start the school year. I mean,
Well, it's a different plan. It's an amendment to the plan. If you can
well,
submit
then
that.
you'd have to amend the plan and vote on that.
Well, what's it agendized?
So,
Reopening plan.
Okay? That's a reopening plan.
Corey?
Thank you. Just to be fair to the members of the reopening committee and the parents and teachers and staff who put a lot of work in the administration, this plan was not rigid. It was developed under it's been ongoing. And it has been changed up until about 20 minutes ago. It was dealt with last week with the committee, reopening committee. And I know you're not in there, so I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm just saying these may be things some people don't know. And I don't want the public to think this plan was designed weeks and weeks ago and doesn't take into account what has changed since. It is evolving constantly. But I think we've reached a point where eventually we have to vote on this thing. It's going to be changed most likely in the future. But if it's going to be changed, absent a policy change, that's the administration's purview. Implementation on the policy is administration purview. But if due to a lockdown, due to overwhelming responses from the survey saying we're simply not bringing our kids to do anything except virtual, then we come back and say, okay, board, we've already approved this plan. The board comes back and says, okay, now we need to change gears. We can change the plan. We can change the plan as many times as we want.
That's correct.
Right? Okay. So that's my thoughts.
Chances are, we're going to go through this year, and I'd be willing to bet none of us can guess exactly where we start in the beginning and where we end. It's not going to be the same. There will be changes, and we do need to be flexible. We do need to have students coming in and out of virtual, face-to-face. We do need to have people choose where they're going. We're trying to balance a lot of things. What I like about where we're at right now is we're really giving choice to parents, and we're giving choice to teachers. At least let's find out where they fall.
Mm-hmm.
And if we move forward with approving this plan and doing the survey, I think we're going to start to feel where things are falling out. And we still have 5 more weeks to be looking at this and making adjustments. Kurt?
You know, moving forward with approving a plan that at least a number of us are not comfortable with prior to doing a survey is almost being rigid. In a way saying, we still got to approve this plan that we developed weeks ago because we had a committee put a bunch of work on it, and by the way, it's better than you guys think it is. Well, it's not good enough for me to want to vote on it. I'm fine with doing the survey. I'm fine with voting on nothing. I'm fine with voting on something different, but I'm not fine with this plan. It's being voted on because we have it in front of us, not because it's a good plan.
No.
Given the environment.
That's an opinion, though, and you're one of 9 opinions.
Mr. Como, that is not fair. You shouldn't just single out one board member like that.
Well, no, I'm responding
We all
to...
have other opinions. And I
I'm
respect
doing
their-
just what you're asking me to do. There are 8 other board members, and that's what the vote is really on. If there is a motion
But
to look at a plan,
I find that
that's
very
what the vote is.
disrespectful when you do that, Mr. Como, and I would prefer you don't do that anymore.
I'm just stating a fact. You're one of 9. Just like me. Your vote counts just as my vote. Kurt?
Yeah, and you're one of 9, Mr. Como.
I am.
Okay.
You are correct. Corey?
In the effort of moving it along, I move to approve the plan as presented with the following amendments: to allow backpacks from middle school to high school, to allow field trips if the administration confirm that the mitigation efforts at the field trip are identical to the ones in the school district in their policy, to prohibit the installation of plexiglass dividers between the students, and to allow students to opt out of the mandatory masking requirement if they have a doctor's note from either a medical professional, a dentist, or a psychologist or psychiatrist.
Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Karen Reinacek.
I'll second it. And can you please repeat the part about the plexiglass?
Actually, why don't we repeat the whole thing?
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is to amend the plan as presented with the oral modifications regarding.
Speak as loud as you can.
Thank you. With the the motion is to approve the plan as presented with the oral changes noted by Dr. Siebert regarding teachers being mandated to wear masks and not be mandated to have face shields, but it is optional, and to allow students in middle school and high school to have backpacks in the classrooms, to allow field trips if the administration can confirm those field trips comply with the mitigation efforts, to prohibit the administration from installing plexiglass dividers between students in the classrooms, and to allow an exemption for students of all ages to opt out of masking if they have a note from a medical doctor, a dentist, a psychologist, or a psychiatrist. That's the motion, sir.
Okay. So I want to make sure that Sue got all that.
Sorry.
Okay, because I may want you to repeat it before we vote, though, because we could have a debate very long on this, and then I want to have it repeated prior to a vote.
Yes, ma'am. Check and scratch, upper left corner.
Okay, discussion. Kurt?
So this is a primary motion that someone could amend. Because there's not an amendment on the motion. It's a primary motion.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Just wanted to have that clear.
And it can be amended. Yes. Diane?
I see this laundry list of changes as being exactly what I was thinking about before. That, I suggested a couple things on the mitigation, list that, I'd like to see done differently. But rather than, I just don't see that we want to be setting up this whole micromanaging list of every little change we want, because I'd like to add mine in too then, if we're going to try to do that, if we're trying to hit everything that needs to be changed. I just have some concerns with trying to do, I think, what we do is make suggestions to the committee and let them review it, and then maybe not approve the plan until our August 12th meeting. And then we'll have the survey results as well.
Well, I view the plan as a starting point. I do. And I think we're fooling ourselves thinking that this is the only meeting this board is going to have on this policy in front of us. I don't see that. And I would like it to be maybe as simple as that, but I do think that there will be issues that administration will want to bring to this board, and this board will want to bring to administration. We're in unprecedented waters, unprecedented times. We've never been through this. We just haven't. It's very difficult. We serve 95,000 constituents, and those 95,000 constituents each have their own opinion. And we're trying to take those all in, and we're trying to do the best we can to represent those people. Kurt?
I haven't heard any opinions asking for banning plexiglass, wanting backpacks. I haven't seen that in any of the emails I've seen. I don't know where these new ideas are coming from. I do know that you're going to have to use plexiglass in some of the tables that we have configured. You know, if you're not in our schools, and each school, and each classroom, that's why we can't micromanage this stuff. You know, we can try to set guidelines for what we want for specific ranges of things, but to say no plexiglass, you have to have backpacks. We talk about it being a starting point, but then we start with a motion where we start to modify the starting point, which tells you the motion's not that, I mean, the starting point's not good to begin with. So I just don't get it.
Corey?
Thank you. The reason I brought the motion, I call them amendments, but it's part of the motion, Mr. O'Brien's correct, is in the mitigation efforts that is going to be sent out to, as part of the survey, it says students are not allowed to bring backpacks. They're not allowed to bring additional items. There are no field trips. And the other ones, Sue has my list, but those I added. So if people want to amend it and suggest we remove an item from the motion, that's fine. Or they want to add something, that's fine.
Amendments can be a removal of a part of a motion. That is correct.
Correct. I guess to a larger point, and this will be my last statement on this, is I think all of us are extremely scared of making the wrong decision. I think we're not going to be able to make the right decision for all students. I wake up at 2 in the morning. When I pull open my iPad, I've got the picture of my 2 daughters. When I think of every other student in this district, those are the faces I see. I'm sure we all do. It's nothing special there. When I drive down the street, I see Kyle's kids, I see Katie's kids. We have to make respectfully, I think we have to make a decision. Am I scared to make the wrong decision? Absolutely. Am I in any way, shape, or form scared of making a decision? No. I think the time has come. We need to make a decision. But it doesn't mean we're locked into it either. And I echo your comments, Mr. Como, and Dr. Siebert's comments, and everybody else who said it. This will likely change. But I think we need to make a decision. We've built in flexibility. We're going to come back. This is in no way, shape, or form either the last meeting we're going to have discussing this. So respectfully to Mr. Bryan, I think today's the day.
Bill?
I agree we need to make a decision, but I don't want to make the decision that we're talking about. I think, again, we've got 2 decisions to make. One is on a plan, and one is on what we're going to do to start the year. The second one is important to deal with quickly, not tonight. The plan up until tonight was focused almost entirely on the face-to-face. Tonight we got the virtual part of it, which I appreciated a lot. It looks good. And of course, the Achieve's been out there for some time. The part of the plan that dealt, 75% of the plan that we received last week dealt with the face-to-face. That part of the plan, we all agree, is inadequate because we're making changes of it tonight. But the changes haven't been adapted. That's why I suggested we could look at those changes in the plan in the future. There's no urgency to do that. At least the more and more we see about what's going on out there and what we will probably be doing doesn't involve the face-to-face part of it. So that part of the plan, I just feel is still inadequate. We have to come up with the solutions to spacing. We have to come up with the solutions for masks. Not in the plan yet. Those aren't in the plan. So I cannot approve the plan the way it sits today. I can and will, as soon as we can, deal with how we're going to which our choices are going to be as soon as possible of the three possibles, or two of the three at least.
Hey, Diane?
I believe the second part of our recommendation that we received in front of us is the important part. That we are saying we'd like to do a survey based on this proposed plan, proposed district reopening plan, and the results we get will determine, our next step. And I think at that point, we can better reflect on approving the plan based on how does the community feel about it? How does what is the response that goes with it?
I do believe that is the intention of administration.
Right. And I think
to
the survey is
continue to-
extremely important based on this proposed plan.
And we will get data, whether it comes from our governor or orders from our governor. We will have all sorts of things that will continue to change and evolve over time. And some of those changes will require us to get back together as a board. And other of those changes we'll have to trust our administration on. And, it's not going to be one meeting and done. I just don't have a sense that that's the case.
Karen's hands up.
Oh, hi, Karen. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to chime in and just say, I actually did receive an email about plexiglass, just so you know, but also, our constituents voted us in to make decisions, whether they're hard or not. We had a survey sent out, and they responded, and they want the kids back in school, and they also want us to make a decision. Yes, it's going to change, but even once the kids are in school, wherever that may be, we're going to change things. We're going to send things home. We're going to say, okay, now this has come up, and now this has come up, and things are going to happen. So whether we make a decision today or in a month, we need to make decisions. So I say we vote on this.
Well, we have to because we have a motion on the table.
Right.
Yes.
Call the question.
On the floor. Okay. Kurt?
I just think when you put a plan forth, you're biasing the survey. And now we're changing the survey because we're going to take some items off the survey because we're going to approve a different plan, backpacks, field trips. So, there's a reason why these mitigation efforts have been put into the plan. There's no way, first of all, I don't like the plan anyway, but to make it even weaker by taking away mitigation efforts shows it's the wrong direction to go. We need to make it stronger, not weaker, in terms of protecting for us to safely get back. And I want to be face-to-face as bad as anybody, and I want to stay face-to-face. I also want to keep people safe. We have staff, and I've gotten tons of them. There's some staff that's already experienced COVID, right? And they've had some bad experiences, and they've been able to make it through it, but it hasn't been easy. So yeah, that's going around. Everybody knows it. We've heard rumors of COVID infections from what happened with our graduations already. That's come across. So we can't take this lightly. And it seems like we do when we say, well, we're going to take a plan that before we had all these infections, and then we're even going to make it weaker by taking away backpacks, not using plexiglass. I can tell you Muskego's putting plexiglass in their rooms, $30,000 worth. So it's not worth me amending, because for me to amend it would make it seem like I was going to vote for it. I'm not going to vote for it. So I'm not going to take the time to amend it.
Corey?
Certainly respect that, but it's a motion. If people want to have an amendment to strike one of the portions of the motion, I would think we could do that, or we just vote it down or vote it up and then move on to the next motion. Motion could include, we're not voting on anything. We're coming back next week or next month. Or someone creates a brand new plan in the next 3 minutes and we vote on it. I think that's how my understanding of the process should work. So I have no problem people want to propose amendments. I'm not trying to stuff anything down anybody's throat, although I would prefer I make all the decisions, but I don't.
You're just one vote, Corey.
Yes, sir. I'll take more,
Just
but
like me, just like Kurt, just like Bill, just like all of us.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Karen?
Thank you. Just a clarification. Corey, did you say mandate backpacks? Or I thought Kurt had said something like that. Was it optional backpacks? It wasn't mandate, right?
Go ahead, Corey. What was your intent in the motion?
correct. My understanding of the plan is that it prohibited backpacks in the classroom. I know there's discussion that they would consider changing it, but my understanding of the plan is as it exists now, the policy, which is currently in place, which does not allow backpacks, is part of the plan. So my amendment was to allow students in middle school and high school to bring backpacks into the classroom.
Thank you.
And Dr. Siebert, could you comment on what the discussion on backpacks were in the committee, the reopening planning committee?
That would be Dr. Cook's area. It's purely safety related.
Yeah, it was, the backpacks were safety related. We've recently got guidance within the last, I would want to say about 24 hours that talked about originally one of the concerns was how long does the virus live on clothing and materials and such. And so when we talked on Tuesday, we had learned, I believe that, there's a minimal concern about, the virus living on backpacks. So there could be flexibility in and around the backpacks. One other thing, if I may add, the idea of the plexiglass pieces in class, if I can comment on that, because we have, just to give the committee some information, we have, I believe it's nearly 30 speech and language pathologists. We have 18 psych social workers and counselors working at the elementary level. We have considerations that we will need to make around the ADA, where kids may not be required to wear a mask, but we will still be required to serve. And those plexiglass barriers, just in those instances, provide a level of protection for the staff. Imagine that small little teller's window that can give you just a barrier from coughs, sneezes. We do have some students that expel more, they sneeze more, they cough more, and we all know little kids don't get their hands up quickly. So to try to mitigate that infection to the greatest level possible, the plexiglass is a very minimally invasive, if you will, or minimal barrier between students and staff. And it is something that our principals, our therapists, and our special education teachers for sure have requested to be in place.
Corey?
Thank you. I'll amend my motion to specify that plexiglass dividers should not be installed between students in the classroom unless it is specific to a student and has a required educational need, or has an educational need required to comply with district policy, state and federal and county rules.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Just
Is there a
changes the
second?
motion.
Doesn't she have to agree to amend the original motion? Yeah.
No, this is, because it is to the
amend
original
your own
one.
motion
So
unless you have a
it
friendly
is to the original one, and you were the person who made the motion. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Is that correct, Dr. Siebert?
I believe so.
Karen, would you also second that change?
I'll second.
Okay. I'm not Mr. Parliamentarian, the expert, so I default to others there. Is there discussion on this amendment? Kurt?
Yeah, just to add, since I have gone into a school and looked at plexiglass, in a science lab, for instance, you have people that, and I don't know how our science labs are, but I can tell you how it worked out in the school I went to. You have kids that are facing each other across a desk with the only way you can protect those kids because they aren't social distant, they're 1.5 feet from each other, is with plexiglass. Otherwise, you lose one more space in that room per segment. So we would have lost, in that room, we would have lost 3 spots for kids if we weren't able to use plexiglass on those science tables. So, and then a lot of the tables they had are 2 kids per table. and to sit in a room, 2 kids per table, they'd have to use plexiglass to separate the kids, even if they put those tables 6 feet apart. So the plexiglass is an additional social distancing tool that is equivalent to being 6 feet apart. And if you take away that tool, you're significantly increasing the infection risk for those types of classrooms. So in every classroom, that's why it's $28,000, they had to split just the table with plexiglass for those rooms that they were in, which is most of them. And we had to split plexiglass for the science desk. So that's another example why we shouldn't be micromanaging this at the board level.
Pat?
Okay, Corey, I got some questions for you. The backpack mandate that we have in the high schools was so the children, the students didn't congregate, which is kind of what we want right now. You know what I'm saying? When we originally put the ban in on backpacks, it was because the kids could carry their books around. They make it to class with 4 minutes to spare, and then they're all congregating around in the hallways and all over the place. That's why in high school, and I think it started at West, but I'm unclear, but that's why we put that in there. So for me, I think that it's good to still not have the backpacks, because in this instance, we definitely don't want the kids congregating. Because if they're congregating for 4 minutes and the masks come off and they're in a big group and we don't know what's going on. So that's my problem. What is your problem with not having backpacks? Because that's why we did it initially, is so that kids would not congregate around. And it didn't have anything to do with disease or anything. It's
Right.
just, it was bedlam.
To directly answer your question, the plan as it stands right now does not allow middle school and high school students to go back to their lockers during the school day, except the beginning or the end. I've heard from a lot of parents and my certain 14-year-old that lives in my house saying, how in the world are we going to do that? They need to have their books. They're either going to carry them all in the hallway. To address your concern about amassing in the classroom or in the hallways, if we have a strict policy on social distancing, I would assume they're going to try to enforce it in the hallways and the teachers are going to enforce it in the classroom. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question, and I totally agree with you if that, but like, I mean, that's just another thing the teachers are going to have to watch. If we got rid of the reason to congregate because the kids were instantaneously there, I think it would be easier on the teachers. Okay. But what's the plan if they can't go back to their lockers? They're going to carry all their books around in their...
We had built in beginning of the day, staggered at lunchtime, and end of the day. So there would be one additional stop.
So they're looking to carry 3 books?
Like the morning's worth of stuff and then the afternoon's worth of stuff was the thought. To limit the congregating in the hallway.
Congregating, right. And then, I mean, that's why the backpacks were put in there. Okay, so, and you don't think that's enough time? I'm just trying to get down to the brass tacks of your amendments. I want to know why you're amending it this way. So the three stops, morning, afternoon, and midday?
That's correct, Dr. Cook, right? That's what we talked about? Yes.
You don't feel that's enough? I just want to, I want to know why you're making these amendments, because we're going to vote on them, and I think everybody wants to know why we're making these amendments, and no one's going to ask you except for
I'm embarrassed to say I didn't realize that there was that ability to go to the lockers in the lunch period. So that alleviates my concerns. Okay. So I'll certainly, I don't know how procedurally we do this. Someone can make an amendment to strike that from the motion, I guess.
Because I've got some more questions for you.
Okay.
So maybe we want to strike them all.
Okay.
The plexiglass.
Yes, sir.
What is your concern about putting plexiglass up between students?
It is primarily focused on the 4K through elementary.
Okay.
I think
through 5th grade.
That's
yes. The end of our elementary is.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. It is focused on that because there is going to be so many changes with the students. Masking, face shields, potentially, plexiglass at the teacher's desk, all these other things. And we are so restricting already due to social distancing and all those things I mentioned, and not having, we're going to have these cohorts. The students, especially the low levels, are going to be in this group, which they're not used to, which is fine. We have a new normal. They're going to be wearing masks, which is, that's the way it is.
Right.
it adds another layer of isolation to students who we so heavily rely on that in-classroom experience to do socialization. If a child has to sit who's in second grade, first grade with a mask on, fully encapsulated in plexiglass or even between the other students, and then look at a teacher who's wearing a mask and a face shield who's behind plexiglass, this is not probably going to happen in every classroom, but it certainly could. That is a dramatically different experience for that child.
Right.
That's why I think it's important.
I would agree.
Yeah.
However, I think that putting in an amendment that restricts it, carte blanche, is not a good idea, because I agree with Mr. O'Brien. I'm very familiar with schools. I work in one. And you are going to need plexiglass in the schools. Another local district spent $30,000 on plexiglass. So
Where?
what school district?
No, where do you want plexiglass in the school? You think
Well,
it's
for instance,
needed?
in a science lab, you definitely will need.
Okay.
Will need it. You may, like Mr. Cook said, you'll need it for some special needs kids, and that's who I work with primarily. And you will need, not in all, because of the way that the special needs students flow, but there will be some instances where you will need to have plexiglass barriers up for those students. 4K, I totally understand, the stress of being in school, but 4K, they love to touch. So there may be some instances in 4K where you will need a plexiglass. My concern is that your amendment outlawed it or restricted it or whatever you want to call it, across the whole district. I don't think we can do that.
It did not, though. The first one did.
Elementary school, I don't like.
The second one changed it if there's a need based on, I forget my wording, medical, special needs. I'm sorry, if there's an individual need for that student
Right.
so the district can comply with mandates, either school policy, state, federal, or county, it's not a blanket prohibition. That's my suggestion.
What were the circumstances? Do you have it written down, Sue, where you can, not to put you on the spot?
Oh, for the.
Yeah, for the plexiglass.
Oh,
So student-specific needs, okay.
So it
And
gives,
you're good with that? You're good with that wording?
I am, and frankly, I understand that could be every science room. And
It
the
could be
kids
every science room,
encapsulated.
it could be every special ed student maybe, but you're good with that?
Absolutely, as long as it's individual choice as to the students. A teacher or the administration could say every single student in that particular lab must have plexiglass dividers because
Right.
it complies with the policy of safety or
Right.
county or state or federal
Or
directive.
distancing?
Yes, sir. Well, no, because putting a plexiglass shield does not change the obligation for distancing. The standard right now that we're adopting is a 6-foot social distancing,
If feasible.
if feasible. Sure, that's the policy.
If
but
feasible, right? Yeah.
it doesn't say we accomplish social distancing by putting plexiglass between the kids. Because then we could pack them in shoulder to shoulder and line them up with plexiglass, right? Okay.
I think
What
I
were
want
the-
Dr. Cook to have a little
okay.
bit of clarification
I'm sorry.
here.
Just for a matter of perspective, our district for the last 15 years has worked towards inclusion of students with disabilities into the general education classroom. So we have built a model around making sure that all kids are educated in a general ed class. Just a thing to add, we don't have desks at the elementary school. All of our elementary kids are at tables.
Right.
And so if we are looking at trying to provide a barrier between students at a table, we can do things with their seat. We can turn their bodies so that they're not necessarily facing. But the idea of physical distancing becomes very challenging if we're coming back to, the recommended seat numbers, the 18, 20, whatever kids in a classroom. If we do put barriers only around kids who have disabilities, we will be signaling those children out, and thus making their education more difficult and also opening us up to, why are we signaling our kids with disabilities out? So for your consideration, I add that to the discussion.
Great point.
been a lot of hands.
No,
I think-
I was just going to go through his entire
Okay,
list.
Pat.
Okay, so the backpacks and the plexiglass, what was the other ones?
Restrictions on face masks.
I'm sorry, what?
Restrictions on face masks.
Okay.
Allowing students to have a waiver.
Allowing students to have a waiver.
If by a medical doctor, a dentist, a psychologist, or psychiatrist.
Is that in the, that's not in the,
No.
is that not in the,
The current plan that we are going off of, based off of Gary Resch's recommendation, was to give the individual ADA reasonable accommodation treatment.
okay.
And that's been based off of information that we've heard from medical providers as far as not writing the notes, as well as then again, what does help us mitigate the infection to the greatest degree in schools.
The
And
American-
that then is the mask barrier and face shields and partitions and such.
My amendment or my motion does not violate the American with Disabilities Act. What Dr. Cook is talking about is we have an obligation as a school district based on federal law to accommodate individuals with disabilities. What I'm talking about is that standard still applies. We can't violate that. If someone with a disability says, I cannot, or that student cannot comply with the district policy of masking for every student, that's fine. They go through the ADA compliance in the state, whatever we have there. What I'm saying is, if there's some other issue that maybe doesn't fall under the ADA, whatever it is, it allows a doctor and all those other professionals I said to give a note that exempts those students. So my proposal doesn't violate the ADA. It doesn't propose that at all.
So, Dr. Cook, if we get a note from Susie's pediatrician and it says she can't wear a mask, what does that look like?
That would be treated the same way we treat the doctor's note for IEPs or 504 plans, and we would be looking at doing an individual treatment of that. Again, if I could just add, the plan that you have in front of you does provide the options that have been discussed, but it was under the guise of how can we keep everybody who comes into our
yeah, for
buildings
sure.
as safe as possible. We can debate the extremes on either end of this pandemic, where you could get sick and die, or you get sick and you have no symptoms.
Right.
There is a quarantine and an isolation requirement that extends beyond our control that comes from the county. It's linked to what I believe the CDC and the state recommend, and that's that 14 to 24-day-ish window.
Yep.
If we're talking about operating our schools and we veer away too much from the precautionary measures that we can take, we are then going to be dealing with the school closures that people have mentioned earlier.
Right.
And it is at the grade level, is it at the school level, is it the whole district? And from a parental standpoint, and I've got 4 small children entering into elementary school, get past the safety discussion of it, what's going to impact my family?
Right.
And if I go into the school year thinking we are open, and by the end of September we are closed, for a family that is a working family, that is a very difficult situation to try to address.
So I just want to hear from you that if a student comes in with a note from a doctor, we're going to take it into consideration.
We will take it into consideration, and we'll take one of those 2 approaches to it to try to address the masking issue.
Okay. And that's not good enough for you?
No, because
Corey.
the administration can say no. And they can say, whether it complies with the ADA or not, the administration can say no. Your doctor's note is not good enough. I think it's a policy decision for the board. And I could be wrong. The board could say I'm nuts. Fine. I think it's a policy decision. If we want to allow students to opt out of the masking requirement because they have a professional that says they cannot wear it or should not wear it. I don't know how my judgment as a board member supersedes that of a medical professional on that issue. People may disagree, and that's fine.
So those are the 3 that you had? Those are the 3 amendments?
Field trips.
Oh, field trips. Oh, yeah, good. Thanks for reminding me of the field trips. So you want to allow field trips?
Yes, sir. If they comply with our assuming we're going to have social distancing, we're going to have masking, we're going to have busing requirements, we're going to have all these things that are in the plan. If the field trip can be accomplished following those rules, whatever they are, I think the field trip should happen. I know there's concern about busing, but we're already busing the students. We're not social distancing on the bus. We're going to have cohorts, we're going to have seating so we can, we're not putting students every 3rd row.
Right.
Follow the same busing requirements, follow the same PPEs, the same social distancing. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay, so refresh my memory, because I was the head of CNI for a while, so overnight trips I approved. What about field trips? Who approves field trips? Is the principal?
Principal approves the building level field trip, yep. The trip to the zoo or the.
Yeah. Or the art museum or Discovery World is approved by, it
the
doesn't have to
school.
go to student services and be
No, the only.
educational.
The only district involvement would be the requirement that they notify us within an appropriate amount of time so that we can get the medications and the field trip forms together that are necessary. But there's no approval that comes out of the district. It's a principal level decision. If I could just add to that, I did talk to our principals about this. They were right at the moment they're looking at how to start school. So their minds weren't even thinking about field trips right now.
Right.
And I think, to Mr. Montillo's point, I mean, we can certainly look at what field trips are appropriate if we wanted to have the flexibility to build those in. That could certainly be subject to discussion and operationally executed if it's the appropriate location to do so. But we were again trying to figure out how we're going to get the kids into school on the first day and start educating them.
So as to that point, maybe that is, effectively, that's what I'm saying, is don't have a blanket prohibition on field trips. I think the principals are probably, I agree, probably the best person in the school, best suited to make that decision, because they'll hear directly from the teacher or whomever, this is the field trip we want to do. Principal could say, look, here's the rules regarding social distancing. And I think it makes more sense now that I talk about it, because a field trip is an extension of the school district. The same rules apply, right? Why ban field trips if we can have compliance with the same rules off campus?
There's a number of board members who want to join in.
I'll stop talking.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Bill?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Whereas
I think you were next.
Huh?
I thought you were next, and think then Diane, and then Kurt.
Well, by the time I get done, you'll forget all that. No.
That could very well be.
As you know, I tend to be a lot shorter with what I talk about. And seeing as how he's drawn back on most of those things, I don't really have much to discuss about it. So, and I have no problem agreeing with that. But this is clear evidence as to why this particular part of the plan isn't ready to be announced. We aren't ready. The very fact that we are having such discussions over all these little pieces of this plan indicate why it's not ready for us to be putting out there. And that's quite simply all I can say about it. It's a negative.
Diane?
And that's why originally I said these were proposed mitigation plan efforts that, parents should be aware of when they're making their decision, but they're definitely subject to change administratively. It should be. If the principal thinks that they could take a field trip, I think we should give them that administrative authority to make that decision. I have to speak to the motion as it stands, because prohibiting plexiglass would not work in my daughter's science lab, because we just talked about it today. And the way it's worded, she wouldn't be able to put that in to allow physics lab activities. And that's going to be necessary if in a face-to-face environment. You can't be looking at this and gathering the data, et cetera, without being closer than the 6 feet. And the plexiglass would make that happen.
Kurt?
Yeah, I think, again, it's the lack of being in the schools. There's no way, I'm all for 6-foot social distancing, but I also know that to accomplish the same, we're going to have to put plexiglass dividers on a table, right? Those two kids aren't going to be 6 foot away. They're going to be sitting at that table, but it's going to have a plexiglass divider to get the same effect of social distancing. And we're not going to buy all new desks. We're going to use the existing tables as much as possible. Because that's what they're doing in Muskego at the middle school level. This discussion scares the hell out of our staff, because we're talking about making all these accommodations that increase the risk. Field trips, backpacks, not using plexiglass. They want us to focus on risk mitigation as a number one priority, not trying to make it a better school experience when we decided that it's not going to be normal. Amanda said it perfectly the other night. This is not going to be normal. It's going to be different, at least for a period of time. And we start trying to add in these things that make it more normal, we scare the staff. And we scare some parents too.
Greg?
I think we're going to be hard pressed to convince staff to come back to school and do an in-person option if we make the environment less safe. And to me, the amendments clearly do that. And I think down the road, when we finally do come up with a plan, I think we'll be adding even more restrictions to protect our staff and students. Safety and health of those groups are at the top of my mind and extremely important. So I would not be in favor of the amendment.
Corey?
I promise I'm not arguing, I'm just responding to the 2 points. Mr. Bryan, you said there's a lack of being in the school. Are you referring to me?
I'm referring to the fact I've done it, Corey. I've been in a school, I've measured out the plexiglass, I've seen where the needs are, and each school is different. I mean, I can't sit here in a board meeting, and neither can you, and decide whether there should be plexiglass in a room or not in a general sense. If it's just specific to a child, as your motion states, that doesn't allow me to do it in a general sense for the specifics of that classroom. Because I've done it. I've laid it out for a middle school.
You've been in the classrooms, you measured it. I understand that. I've been in the classroom as well. And frankly, I can propose that as part of the motion. If there's a consensus that that is the poison pill, okay. I don't know if I'm getting that sense or not. I just think we need to vote. And if this is voted up or down, that's certainly fine. And then there'll be another motion, or a motion could be, here's a new amendment, or a new motion, or a motion to not vote on this plan at all. I'm sorry. Regarding the teachers, and we're scaring the teachers, it probably is. A lot of this is scaring all of us. And I love teachers. I'll say that enough. Or I can't say that enough. But the teachers aren't the only people with a voice. There's students, there's parents, there's the community at large. So,
Karen?
Thank you. I was just looking through here. On what page does it say that there has to be plexiglass, or it's mandated in this proposal? Is it?
no, not that I know of.
Nothing, no reference to plexiglass?
There isn't anything, Karen. There isn't anything right now.
Okay, so if this is up to if we're hung up on the plexiglass, we could always discuss it later, roll something out and discuss it later. What I wanted to say was, when I think about people that go to visit their loved ones in jail, it's so it's very cold to speak with someone that you love through glass. Now imagine all these kids going to school and they're all divided. I mean, we told them months ago, you're just going to be out for 2 weeks. And then it was a month, and then it was another month, and now it's all summer, and now here we go. We're either going to vote not to go back again and keep on delaying this, or B, that we can go back. And now it's okay with masks, yes, and that's for basically the majority for the teachers, because the children are not the ones with the health risk. So we're doing this for the teachers, and staff, and now we're saying, okay, well, we could introduce plexiglass. Well, the other people are. Well, where does it stop? I'm just wondering, when they're in a plexiglass box with a little hole through it so they can speak through it, I can't see where this is going. I know it's not mandated right now, or it's not in the proposal, but I don't see the plexiglass being a very good environment for our kids. I know we keep talking about the staff and keeping them safe, but think about the kids and how they feel going in to this environment. And we've talked about the masks, the face shields and all of that, and everyone in masks, and now everyone's separated by plastic or glass or whatever it is. I mean, I just, can we go back to the kids for a minute and think about how they feel and how they want to just not be so isolated? So I get that we might not have to talk about the plexiglass right now because it's not in the proposal, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I just kind of take a step back and realize what we're saying and what that looks like.
I saw both you guys up at the same time.
Just want to answer.
Are you?
Can I just
Oh,
answer?
go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah. Karen, I understand what you're saying, but the plexiglass we're talking to is really just a divider on the table so that the kid sitting next to each other, they would still be open, more or less. It's just a divider on the table. If there's two kids sitting next to each other, you need a divider between them. Otherwise, they're not safe. Okay. And it's not that restrictive. It's just a small divider on the table so that the child can safely sit next to each other. They're able to talk freely. They're not enclosed in plexiglass. We don't have them speaking through a hole. It's not going to be that invasive.
Not yet.
Okay.
Amanda, do you? Okay. Corey?
Maybe I can end this. If anybody supports that particular part of the motion, just blink. If I'm not getting any blinks, I'll just amend my motion to pull it. Maybe raise your hand because everybody's still blinking and I can't tell if you're just blinking. I don't want to go on debating this if no one supports that part of the motion.
Or someone can make an amendment.
Right. Maybe that's easier. Just make the amendment.
For me, Corey, I think that whether or not there's plexiglass needs to be up to the situation in the school.
Fair enough.
I also agree with you on the field trips, though, that should also be up to the administrative level at the school, how it is right now. But I think that there are certain places where you're going to need plexiglass and there's certain places that you're not, and I would like to see that. I mean, we hire these principals to make these decisions. I would love to have had some principals come in and tell us what they're going through. I do know what they're going through. I just don't know what they're going through in this district. But for me, I think that my problem with the plexiglass is that it's got to be a site decision. I mean, I got
Fair enough.
science lab, I need some plexiglass. I don't think that it is the administration's goal to wall these kids off, but I will say that I would rather be isolated in a classroom with other kids than isolated in my basement by myself. So that's the way that I look at it with the plexiglass. If we got to put a couple dividers up, but the kids are still interacting, so be it. I mean, I want the kids back, and I want them as safe as possible, and I want the teachers as safe as possible, and like I said, I want the principals as safe as possible. So if we got to do a little plexiglass, we got to do a little plexiglass. Because I just don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going to box these kids in. There's not going to be, it's not going up to the ceiling and behind them, and they're not walking. It's not going to be like a Milwaukee County bus. So that's, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. I don't want the kids walled in, but I do want the kids back. And if we got to put a little plexiglass up at a science table or between a couple kids, I think it's fine.
Fair enough. And I would just suggest amending the motion to something to that effect. And frankly, the best I can do is try, right? That's
I
fine.
agree 100%. I mean, I respect that you made those amendments.
You as well.
So are you withdrawing that amendment? Did you just say that or no? I'm just asking. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Well, I will withdraw the amendment and then suggest, because my original motion had the prohibition on plexiglass, that someone propose an amendment to whatever I think you're suggesting, leave it up to principals.
I think that we should be leaving a lot of the decisions boots on the ground, because we don't know what's going on. I mean, I work in a school, Kurt's been in schools, but I still don't know what's going on in those schools, especially right now. I will in a month. I'll know exactly what's going on in the school that I work in, but right now I don't know what's going on in that school.
I would support allowing the principals to do that with consultation with whomever they please.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, if I roll into a school or any of us does and say this is unacceptable, we can agendize it and deal with it, right?
Oh, for sure. If
Okay.
there's an issue that a parent has, they can definitely bring it to the attention of the board members,
Right.
and we can definitely discuss it.
Yeah, I think your points are well made.
But I just think that and not you, but we have to let the professionals that we play. Bill Gates always had a saying, why would I hire somebody that I have to watch all the time? If we're hiring administrators that we have to watch all the time, we're doing a bad job hiring. So I think that we should let it up to these professionals in school. The teachers can go to them with any issues they have, and then the decision can be made there on stuff like that. The mask, that you were talking about with I find it hard to believe that we are going to require a child to wear a mask if they can't wear it. And I'm not telling you to remove that, but the administrators that we have in this district and the teachers that we have in this district and the board here are not going to unduly put a child at risk for any reason, whether it's a mask, a face shield, plexiglass, or going on a field trip. And I think that we all have to have that faith in our employees, that they will make the right decision for our children every day. So, I totally understand what you go, I'm a big liberty guy too, a big freedom. But I just do not think that if a child gets a note from a doctor and they cannot wear a mask, that we will be forcing them to wear a mask and sending them to virtual school if they don't. So, and I totally understand what you're saying, but I have a little bit more faith in our people that we have put on the ground.
I have tremendous faith, like
I know you do. But I'm just giving my opinion.
Right.
Because I understand where you're coming from.
Mine's more of
with
a
the mask
policy decision.
Yeah.
And I understand the faith. I have the same.
I think that
mine one more of trust but verify. Put the boundaries on it and deal with it.
I think that though, if we should maybe put it in a policy. But the plan is not, I don't believe, is going to be policy. Right, exactly. So, if we want to make it in a policy that we require our student services or whoever to abide by doctors' recommendations, then we could definitely put that in a policy, and I'm sure Mr. Baumgart would love to hear that.
That would take at least 2 months.
It might take 2 months. It might take 2 months, but I have extreme confidence that during those 2 months, I don't have anybody that's looking to adversely affect the children.
Fair enough.
That's just me.
Okay, fair enough. What I'd like to do is so we've been talking a while and we've made some tweaks to the original motion. I want to have Sue read the motion as is.
As amended.
Well, as it is currently, yep, as. We need to be able to hear Sue.
Okay. I'll read the first motion first.
Sure.
And then the amended one, and I may not have the exact wording. I will get that correct when I read.
And actually, really, the only thing that we need to
the
have is the amended one.
Okay.
It's just I don't think we need the original one.
No.
You need all of it in the tweak.
Okay, because, the original motion had amendments, which were to allow backpacks for middle school and high school into the classroom.
Sure, yeah, you need to read that.
To allow field trips if they comply with mitigation efforts. Prohibit plexiglass dividers. Allow exemptions from masking if they have a doctor's excuse from medical doctor, dentist, psychiatrist, or psychologist. Then that was amended to change it to prohibit plexiglass between students unless specific needs and compliance with mandates of district, county, and state. So those are the two motions on the board.
Okay. And actually, what you said were the first amendments really was in the initial motion. They weren't technically amendments. We're loosely using that word amendment right now. They were items added to the original plan. Okay. So any further discussion and/or amendments to where we're at? Corey.
I'm quickly running out of friends, I think, but I will move to amend the current motion to strike the plexiglass comment.
Okay.
So wouldn't
Is there a second to that? Let's handle this as a.
That's my last change, I promise.
Ended it yet. Just the person making the motion.
Yeah. Go ahead, Karen.
To remove any plexiglass comment.
Okay. So you're good with that, okay. Yes, Kurt.
I'll be opposing it. I mean, my computer's blowing up. People are so scared about what they're hearing here tonight. I mean, they're really scared. We want to make sure the community knows we're serious about protecting our staff, and we talk about, at this meeting tonight, all sorts of exceptions we want to make. Even though we took them off, it makes it sound like we're not committed to being safe. The comment a couple days ago about the lunchroom. You know, we shouldn't be facing each other and eating in a lunchroom. It's not safe. But saying, well, that you're trying to do too much. Well, in the field I'm in, there's no such thing as too much. One fatality, you get fired. Okay? And that's why the death rates are down, because there's no such thing as too much. I mean, you used to have lots of deaths in mining. You don't have it anymore. In agriculture, you still have lots of deaths. Why? Because they aren't cautious. They don't have anybody telling them not to do that. So I can't support this continuing, ongoing effort to approve a plan that wasn't properly thought out given the circumstances we're in. And I can't support a continued discussion to weaken the plan further, because it's really hard on our staff to hear this type of discussion. I don't know who we're trying to please with this discussion.
Bill?
I guess I simply am not in favor of this plan, period. I guess that's an overstatement. The plan would need some attention. I believe the plan will happen. It needs some attention, particularly the entire 2/3 of it that deal with face-to-face. And that's essentially what we've been talking about for the last couple of days anyway. So amendment or no amendment, I'm not going to support the plan. I'm not going to support the plan as a vote tonight. I think the plan just needs to be worked on some more with some revisions.
Diane?
I also cannot support the plan, and the more amendments that are added just makes it obvious that we need to let the administration and let the team continue to look at it. You know, that doesn't mean we shoot it down. We're not going to accept it tonight. That doesn't mean we're not going to accept it eventually. You know, it's just a matter of, you know, we're suggesting that these are the proposed options in the survey. So I think that is supporting the fact that we're going this direction. We want to try to get a face-to-face option available for our families. But we don't have it fine-tuned yet. It's a work in progress. And I don't want to be the micromanager to try to figure out how all those improvements are going to go.
Oh, Karen?
Thank you. I just had a comment about the backpacks. If they're going in their lockers, they're a foot apart anyway. So why not have that be optional for the kids? That's it.
Other comments, questions, amendments? All right, Sue, I guess we are, did you?
Okay.
Amanda? Amanda wants to talk.
I don't know how much value this will add, but I'll at least get it off my chest. At this point, we need to vote on a starting point. I can appreciate you're saying there's still fine tuning that needs to be done. I can't put into families' mouths what's best for them. We need their input. So, and I'd rather be accused of asking for too much input than not enough. I'm not in a position to say what's best for one family versus another. So, my vote is to approve let's get a starting point and we'll work it from there. So, that's it.
Other questions, comments, amendments? I can understand what you're saying, Amanda. There have been people who want to know what direction we're going. I think that what we have in front of us will allow us to adapt over time. I think we're probably going to even see that we'll be back at it at our next full board meeting. We should have the data back from the survey, and that's going to tell us a lot. And we can continue to evolve. And it will evolve over time throughout this year. We need to be flexible enough, but I also agree that we need to have a starting point. Anybody else? Okay, Sue?
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So we're voting on the last one was to remove the plexiglass comment. So would it be to approve the plan with the list of his amendments, but to remove the plexiglass
Yes.
comments is
So
what
it's
we're
the
voting
initial,
on now?
it's essentially the initial
So
motion.
to approve the plan with the following amendments or adjustments to allow backpacks, middle school, high school in the classroom, allow field trips if they comply with mitigation efforts, allow exemptions from masking if they have a doctor's excuse from medical, dentist, psychiatrist, or psychologist.
Yes. I believe that is where we're at.
All right. Diane Boyd?
No.
Corey Montiel?
Yes.
William Baumgart? Greg Dietz?
No.
Patrick McCaffrey? Karen Reinacek?
Yes.
Amanda Roddy?
No.
Kurt O'Brien?
No.
Joseph Como?
Yes.
So 3-6.
So it does not pass as presented. Pat?
I move to approve the school reopening plan with an amendment of allowing field trips, administrative control at the school level.
Is there a second to that? Second by Karen. Discussion. Kurt?
I just think field trips increases the is it field trips?
It's field trips.
That's what you're adding?
Control whether or not they go into.
Yeah, I understand. I can see the flexibility you're trying to add, but we're trying to mitigate risk. And this is a plan that we're expecting to hope to be able to change because the infection rates will go down. So I won't be able to support that, even though I understand what you're saying, okay? So I think we should try to avoid adding any risk, and that adds risk.
Bill?
Same thing. Eventually, we're going to have field trips. But this plan has to be fixed.
Yeah, you just don't like the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's ready.
Right.
I just don't think the plan is ready.
Right.
It's not that I don't like it. I just don't think it's ready.
Right.
It's misleading people.
Other questions or comments? Diane?
I think we have our starting point in terms of what we're asking for survey feedback about. You know, we don't have to have it be an approved plan. We're trying to get more feedback to decide which direction to go with that plan. So that's just my thought. No offense to you in approving the plan. I just don't think we're ready until we get more feedback.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Sue, would you read back that motion?
To approve the plan with the amendment to allow field trips when under the control of the principals.
Okay. Please take the roll call vote.
William Baumgart?
No?
Kurt O'Brien?
No.
Amanda Roddy?
Yes.
Karen Reinacek?
Yes.
Greg Dietz?
No.
Patrick McCaffrey?
Aye.
Diane Voigt?
No.
Corey Montiel?
Aye.
Joseph Como?
Aye.
That passes 5-4.
Passes 5-4. Okay. It's been a long night. Long night, a lot of discussion. I'm sure our discussion and will continue over time. I want to thank everybody on your committee, Dr. Siebert, to all the effort, the board members, all the people who've written us. I'm sure this dialogue will continue. I have a feeling it's continuing right now. But thank you, everybody. We do stand adjourned.